A stormy weekend in the EFL saw Hull in hell, also known as the bottom of the championship, but they're buying what Sellers is selling. Cov Bank a win for Frank in rank conditions. Neil Harris is sick of thickos. And after eternity on paternity, George lets me back on the pod for 45 minutes or so, but says I really ought to be with my daughter. Part 2 sees a varsity match. Modern Media's Premier Cambridge fan, Max Rushden, joins Modern Media's Premier Oxford fan, George Elek, to talk Leagues 1 and 2, including reading Reading's blood pressure on the hunt after losing Ruben. And in League 2, Hurricane Harry puts the win in Swindon. And after Matt Sadler's Matt winner, they skedaddle from Vale Park as league leaders. Welcome to FSA Fan Media of the Year award-winning, not the Top 20 podcast. He's George Elek. I'm Ali Maxwell. Good to be back.
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate you on being the first person to ever mention Oxford and Cambridge in the same sentence about football and not use the boat race as a reference. So congratulations to you for that.
Well, I did say varsity, which is a nod to those two world-famous institutions. It's not the boat race.
But crucially, congratulations on the birth of your daughter, Ali, which is very exciting. And I, as I'm sure the listeners will agree, am delighted to welcome you back briefly to the pods. It's been weird without you, but it is wonderful that you are now a father. And I was blessed to meet your lovely daughter last week. She is very, very sweet and very, very small. And you are already showing signs of being an excellent father.
Oh, thank you, matey. Yeah, she's downstairs. She's not yet 2 weeks old, and she's amazing. And it's been a hell of a couple of weeks. And just to sort of be on brand here for the pod, she is, I would describe her as a real high ceiling, low floor kind of girl at the moment. In that she, at her best, makes me happier than I've probably ever felt before. And in those moments, it feels like you can handle pretty much anything that could be thrown at you. And then at other times, quite a lot gets thrown at you, quite often in the middle of the night, and you feel sort of relegation level as a parent. But no, it's been amazing. One thing that has been a real bit of me, as I've been missing my sort of pod analysis, is that you recommended an app that we are now using to track various baby data points, sleeps and feeds and nappies. And I've just about got a big enough sample size now to be really poring over the data for some good analysis. So yeah,
what are your learnings?
Well, 6.8 poos per 90.
Nice.
That's
per
kind
90.
of the main one. Yeah, she's both footed, by which I mean she is happy to feed on either side. And it's just, what I find most amazing is that there have been some really difficult times. Nothing out of the ordinary, just sort of new parent stuff that I'm sure lots of listeners will know firsthand. But it's incredible how much that stuff melts away when the sun comes up and when the good times are rolling. It's been such a privilege. And and Emily, Mrs. M, has been quite incredible. So we've been very lucky, as listeners of the pod have known for a year or so. It takes a village to raise a child, and family have been amazing. Friends have been amazing. You popped around to take Matilda to the pub for her first pint, which was really special. Even the listeners have been amazing with messages of support, and even a present sent to the office by Tim, which I am super, super grateful for. And in the quiet times, I've listened to some pretty good Not the Top 20 podcasts, George, with Goffey on the Betting Show on Thursdays, on the Mondays as well with Matt, and then with Dave Jones. You've flexed a little bit that black book of yours, that contacts book, with the presenter of the most popular football show on UK TV, Monday Night Football, replaced me last week, and then this week the presenter of the biggest football podcast in the world, Football Weekly's host, Max Rushden.
Yeah, no, they have been, they're friends of the pod, really. And I know, Dave's someone who listened to the pod for a long time, who we know pretty well. And that was his first time doing it. And Max, as you guys will hear, very sweetly said that he owes us for the times we contribute to Guardian Football Weekly, which is incorrect because we get paid to do that. Really generous of both of them to give up their time. It does mean that if I sound a bit sleepy, in the League 1 and League 2 segment, Max lives in Australia, so we had to record at 7 a.m. this morning.
Incredible. Max also hosts a podcast called What Did You Do Yesterday, which is fairly new and something that I like a lot. Before the baby was born, listened to that on a lot of car journeys and enjoyed it very much. Just to say, thank you for all the kind messages I received. Also, please be patient and understanding in the next few weeks and months with both George and myself. I'm very aware that there's a thing called baby brain, and I'm very nervous about how that would affect my performance on the pod.
I was going to say, yeah, baby brain is definitely a thing because you're just knackered, and I know that you're not getting much sleep. But like your intro, made a mockery of my nursery rhyme last Monday, which took me all of hours to pen.
A ring of roses. Yeah, no, I liked that. But we set high standards, George, pre-baby. In fact, award-winning standards. I do find it quite funny that the 2 times that I've seen you since Matilda was born, one was the aforementioned first pint, wetting the baby's head, as the expression goes. But before that, we met at an event space in London last Monday night, and we won the Fan Media of the Year FSA Award. 3rd time we've been at the awards, first time winners, and we celebrated properly. We celebrated properly by singing Justin Timberlake, Natasha Bedingfield, James, and even Celeste, Don't Stop This Flame, with the Football Clichés lot and the lads from The Pinch at Lucky Voice Soho, well into the early hours.
Yeah, it was a good night, wasn't it? Nice to celebrate. It was quite often when you and I go to award ceremonies, be it the FSAs or the EFL awards, there's some reason why I have to slink off early. So it was quite nice that the one time I didn't have to slink off early, we won, which was fun. So I spent most of the time in the booth at Lucky Voice just staring at our trophy, our award, which is now sadly at yours. I'll be taking that back after exactly 6 months. But no, amazing to get the award. Very humbling. It's one of those things where, we've been doing this for 8 years. We've been nominated for a few things. We've never won anything before. And an FSA award is the thing that I think you want to win. Gary Neville was up on stage just before us. Peter Drury was on stage just after us. We were presented the award by John Murray. These are pretty big deals in the sports broadcasting space and just the football space, to be honest. Hosted by Victoria Derbyshire. Less a big name in the footballing space, but still a big name in broadcasting. So it meant a lot. And as I kind of bumbled my way through on stage, feeling relatively nervous by all the eyes glaring up at us, it's thank you to all of our listeners and everyone who helps make NTT20 what it is. Because, Ali and I may be the people who create the content, but without the community that surrounds it, it isn't anything. And as I put in quite a schmaltzy LinkedIn post the next day with a bit of a sore head, we've had some knocks in the past, specifically I would say the decision, having been booked to work on the first couple of ITV highlight shows, we were then told that we weren't wanted by those for no real reason given. So this feels like a bit of validation for us, really, that there is room for us. We are providing comment on EFL football free to listen to in a space where there's very little of that right now, and we are absolutely committed to keep doing that, and we love doing it. So thank you to the FSAs, thank you to you guys, and it was a really nice moment. But we kick on now, we don't rest on our laurels. We're 1-0 up.
I love that, and there certainly won't be any more pods that start with 5 to 8 minutes of self-indulgence, and we will try.
Well, you say that, you should wait till League One and League Two.
We will try and keep the baby talk to a minimum in future weeks, but just to say thank you for all of your support, and it meant a huge amount for us to win an FSA award. In the Championship, let's start at the bottom, not at the top. I feel like some quite big winners of the weekend came in the bottom few teams. A couple of teams we've not been able to go big on very often, George, getting big wins in the form of Portsmouth, who beat Bristol City 3-0, QPR, who beat Norwich 3-0. For Pompey, George, this was only their 3rd win of the season, and playing some pretty nice stuff with some key men at the top of the pitch, combining very nicely. Colby Bishop, Callum Lang, Josh Murphy.
Yeah, this was their best performance of the season, and by some stretch, I would say. They beat Bristol City, a decent Bristol City side, 3-0. They were good value for their win. I'd say it was a game where John Mousinho got the better of his opponent in Liam Manning, in terms of chance creation, in terms of general quality within the game. Two sides who are probably more happier to play in transition, and that kind of is reflected by the way the game went, with neither side really stringing together long periods of possession. But certainly Pompey's press was the one that was more effective. And it does feel like Colby Bishop's arrival back in the Pompey side, which obviously a player who last season, his goals were very important to Pompey's promotion. He offers a lot more than goals in being quite an old-fashioned centre-forward. his return definitely seems to have instigated a bit of an improvement in terms of their performance level. Partly, I guess, because Yengi, their other kind of natural striker, hasn't really performed this season, and he does offer a focal point up top that they've been lacking. But it was the press that triggered the first goal, combined between Bishop, Potts, Murphy, and then Bishop getting the chance to tuck home. And then it was all about Josh Murphy, really, from there, in my mind. Albeit the assist from Bishop for the second goal is magnificent, and a really, really good finish by Murphy. Bishop, not necessarily that kind of link player that you necessarily associate some strikers a bit of being, especially not kind of round the corner, but Murphy timing the run to perfection and finishing well. And then just one of those moments from Murphy where he shows that when he's at it and when he's on form and full of confidence and motivated, he has Premier League quality in his boots, and the delivery for that third goal for Callum Lang is just not one that you often see. Just an unbelievably well executed cross from wide on the left hand side. The ball covers so much ground, but it dissects the goalkeeper and the defensive line for Lang to tuck home. I'm really, I personally am very happy to see Murphy thriving. I think he deserves to be loved and he deserves to be playing well. Albeit I know some Oxford fans would probably disagree given the circumstances around how he left the club. But, he gave me probably one of the best days of my whole life, and I'll forever be thankful for that. So delighted to see him doing well. And for Pompey, this is a significant win and a sign that maybe now key players are coming back. They're starting to hit their stride at the right time, especially when a couple of others around them, certainly Oxford and Argyle, are really floundering towards the bottom end, not to mention a couple of others we'll get on to later.
Bit of a weird thing to call someone, but I reckon Murphy is the best attacking player in the relegation battle, and that could be crucial for Portsmouth if he stays fit. In terms of goal contributions, well, in the calendar year, having really caught fire for Oxford second half of last season, plus 8 goal contributions so far this season, it's 19 in total, which is fantastic. Numbers from the wing, split pretty evenly between goals and assists as well. I think that's what makes him such a dangerous wide forward, is that he's a goal threat, he's a creator, he can carry the ball as well. He's that sort of nice triple threat. And, multi-dimensional because he's so strong with his weaker foot. And I bang on so much about two-footedness. I think it's important all over the pitch. I think for wide forwards, it's a massive reason for some players having a higher ceiling than others, because his specific left foot proficiency is in his crossing ability, which is, it's a modern game where wide forwards, wingers, they don't put that many crosses in. It's normally the fullbacks, isn't it? But, when I picture Murphy, you think of him receiving the ball, standing up a defender 1v1. Defenders want to block him coming inside onto his right foot for obvious reasons. So he gets that extra bit of space, and his ability to shift the ball quickly onto his left foot and cross with quality, that's the most important thing, with quality on his weaker foot, is astounding. I remember a game, was it Peterborough game you played last season? Did he thrash Peterborough? And he was absolutely magnificent.
Correct.
And
yes.
he's just, just so many different ways of hurting a defence when he's on his game. And we saw that with his assist for Lang. That was a sort of cross, inch perfect, leading to a tap in for Lang, that brings back memories of Andy Gray's commentaries in the 90s, where he's like, and it's a cross that says, "Go on, Callum, I'm putting this on a plate for you. Stick it away," and he does. My Andy Gray is very similar to my Billy Connolly and very similar to my Steve Evans, which is something I need to work on. But, it's Bishop as well, isn't it? Stat on Weekend Notes on NTT20.com today that Pompey have scored 8 goals in 144 minutes when Bishop's been on the pitch, once every 18 minutes, albeit a small sample size. Without him, 13 goals in 1,386 minutes, about every 100 minutes or so. So, exciting, impressive, and hopefully can be backed up, because such a tough start to the season for this Pompey team. They showed a lot of support in Mousinho, new contract, Rich Hughes, new contract. They're sticking with the good people that they have at the club and not overreacting to that poor start to the season. And hopefully that will bear fruit. You could probably say the same about QPR, couldn't you? And their support of Martí Cifuentes during what's been a really miserable start to the season. George, this 3-0 win at home to Norwich, their first home win of the season, coming in December, and also their first win on a Saturday in the 24-25 season.
Yeah, mad. And not ideal for those of us who are going to be in the away end at QPR on Wednesday night. I think the most impressive thing here was probably the way that QPR were able to suffocate Norwich and prevent a side who've been so good from an attacking perspective. and limits them to very little. Really quiet the threat of Borja Sainz, who's been a relentless goal threat in recent weeks, and see the game out relatively comfortably. I mean, the goals themselves, the first two both came from set pieces. Jimmy Dunn eventually bundling the ball home after a bit of a goalmouth scramble. Ryan Coley with the second, with a header, and then Coley scoring his second of the game and his second for QPR on the break to make it 3-0. Interesting player, Ryan Coley, who is a QPR Youth Academy graduate who has made a bit of a name for himself in terms of being a promising young player coming through. And he started the season as part of Marti Cifuentes' first team. And then something very weird seems to have happened where he wasn't pictured in the QPR first team photo. He suddenly was back in the academy again. Cifuentes was kind of being quite cagey and evasive when he was asked about him, effectively saying that nothing had really changed and he wasn't injured. He just wasn't in the side anymore.
I think it's a contractual situation.
Interesting, because I was going to say it doesn't reflect overly well on Cifuentes that his return to the side seemingly sparked a massive improvement in terms of performance level. But either way, he looks like he's going to be a really good player. And interestingly, I was on The Dub, which is my BBC Oxford podcast this morning, and Ben Purkis, who's also on it with me, has coached Ryan Coley, and he was giving some insight and said that the one thing that stands out for him is that he's a really good finisher, someone who's really clinical in front of goal, which, given his pace and his directness, is obviously a trait that's going to appeal to QPR. So I'm excited to see him in the flesh on Wednesday. I'm sure I'll see him there. But this is a big win to crown what's been a really, really good week for QPR, where they've gone from being a side that look fairly toothless in front of goal. Zan Salar's improvement in that respect is going to be big for them going forward. And also they look to have unearthed a bit of a gem in Coley, who hopefully his issues in terms of being able to get on the pitch are now over.
I'm just wondering if it's just pure coincidence that in the calendar year where Virat Kohli's form has dropped off a cliff so much, some of his powers have been swallowed up by QPR youngster Ryan Coley, very much spelt differently, and therefore probably quite a bad gag. A big one for Jimmy Dunn this. He very sadly lost his father last week, but having been back home with his family in Ireland, he started this game, played this game. Not only did he score to put them in front from a set piece, he also kept quiet Borja Sainz, which is not something that most Championship right-backs can say this season. So for a number of reasons, big ups to Jimmy Dunn. 3 clean sheets in a row for QPR. That is how it needs to be for them. They have got obvious absences of Ilias Chair and Dembele. That's going to reduce what they can do in terms of creativity. Salah was injured here, having finally scored a goal and maybe looking a bit more confident. He came off early, and clearly Coley, who I don't think is a number 9 by trade, albeit scoring 2 goals here, probably shouldn't be expected to lead the line in Salah's absence. So it's a pretty tough scene for them going forward, but we know under Cifuentes they can be a top 8, top 6 level defensive team, and that's what they need to be in order to move away from the relegation zone. And I think with this Norwich defeat, I'm really building the picture of them as classic Maxwell cliche klaxon, a high ceiling team with a pretty low floor. They have scored more goals at this stage of the season than any other Norwich season in the Championship since 2010. But they've got fewer points at this stage than all but one season in that time. They've got the joint fewest wins at this stage. And I just think that the wins that they have had have been so good enough and exciting enough for fans to kind of see the potential and hopefully swallow a few of these defeats where they just look a little bit chaotic at the back and they don't click going forward. They're also obviously suffering from absences. So big wins for QPR and Portsmouth. It was those two in Coventry City who got big wins out of the sort of bottom 10. It's quite an interesting bottom of the Championship. You've got Cov in 14th on 21. You've got Hull in 24th on 15 points. So 6 points separating 11 teams at the moment down at the bottom. It's still very, very, very tight. Cov, George, getting their first win under Frank Lampard. Quite a sweet one, I think, for him, and I'm sure for his new assistant manager, Joe Edwards, former Millwall manager, going to Millwall and getting a 1-0 win. How did you see this one?
Yeah, probably quite a good time to go to Millwall as well. Obviously, Millwall were in a long unbeaten run heading into this one, but key players missing, where you've got Jake Cooper who's injured, Jaffet Tanganga suspended, meaning that it was a Murray Wallace, Ryan Leonard kind of back two centre-backs, McNamara and Joe Bryan playing as full-backs. And then also Roman Esse, who's been obviously a breakout star this season for Millwall, also out. So in terms of players missing, that looks to have hampered Millwall's their performance level. Coventry were sent off favourites for this game, which surprised me a fair bit. And good to see Efren Mason-Clark as the star again. Before his goal, he'd missed the biggest chance of the game, kind of fluffing his lines a bit when in front of goal. But just a couple of minutes later, finishing off a cross really well off the bar. I do think the injury to Haji Wright, as frustrating as it will be to Coventry fans, is going to be a good thing, probably long term, certainly for Efren Mason-Clark, because it means that he will play as long as he's fit. That inside left role is going to be his going forward, and it's good to see him showing Coventry fans what he can do now with 2-2. Because I know that some Cov fans were pretty unimpressed by what they saw early on in his tenure there, albeit playing on the right hand side when he's definitely that right-footed left winger who needs to be able to come inside onto his right foot to be as effective as he can be and take up those spaces at the back post. So that paying off well. A pretty good result from Coventry, as you say, with Joe Edwards and the added wrinkle there as to his very short tenure in charge of Millwall, where I have never spoken to the man before, but I can pretty much guarantee that he will feel like he wasn't given enough time to implement his philosophies and his thoughts and get the results he was tasked to get. So significant win for Cov, for Edwards, and Millwall maybe, having had that really good uptick in form, these absences could halt their progress somewhat.
Civil war, George. Civil war brewing in Bermondsey. Neil Harris, he's never been one to take defeat well. And how many managers do? I can't think of many.
Few.
But he is notable for how wound up he can get. But his delivery of anger is not it's not always ranting and raving. He speaks like a man who's got like a mosquito buzzing in front of his face that he can't actually see it to swat it away. He's got this incredible way of basically being angry, which I really enjoy. However, he used the wrong word here, and it's threatened to cause him probably more issues than your average outsider would expect him to have, given their pretty healthy league position and good performances this season. He was talking about the game after the game, and he said, "You miss Romain, you miss Jaffet, and you miss Jake Cooper. 3 players that probably get in anybody's championship team." So just a reminder to people, the thickos, that when you take the 3 best players out of the team, that this is Millwall Football Club. I don't really understand that last bit. I absolutely take the point that missing your 3 best players is important, particularly 2 centre-backs for a team who are so strong defensively, and frankly, Cooper and Tanganga contribute to about a third of their goals as well. The use of the word thickos, I mean, firstly, I should say Hugh has written a brilliant bit on this in the weekend notes on NTT20.com. This has not gone down very well within the Millwall fan base. I personally find this almost impossible to take seriously, partly because I'm a neutral and I don't really care about stuff like this. But
it's
also,
so weird.
Can we talk about the use of the word thickos, which I'm sure is a sort of word you can't be using post-primary school?
Thicko. It's such a weird... I mean, the whole rant feels like, you and I have done a lot of podcasts, and I think we probably both know this feeling. It feels like every word he's saying, he doesn't know where he's going to go next. And then at the end, he just has to end it. So he says, "This is Millwall Football Club," because it's a fact and you can't deny it. I have no idea the relevance in terms of the rest of what he's saying. He probably says the word thicko and immediately thinks, yeah, that was silly. Let's stop talking now. It's really weird. But then we saw this earlier in the season where Harris took a massive swipe, not only at the fans, but also seemingly at Macaulay Langstaff when there was a real desire from the fan base to see him being played, and he played him and he wasn't very good, and he basically was like, "Well, there you go, lads, that's your fault." And they bounced back from that pretty quickly. It feels like this kind of abrasive management style is something that he's adopting. Whether that's deliberate or not, I'm not entirely sure, but I can't say it makes much sense to me. But Neil Harris works in wonderful ways.
Next week we'll have John Eustace calling Rovers fans dipsticks.
Yeah.
Going right back to primary school insults. Good performance from Jack Radoni, and it was his role in particular that stood out to me when I was with one eye, half asleep, going through the average position maps of the EFL teams over the weekend. He's playing in a number 10 role. he looks like he's getting pretty close to the striker, what you notice is huge proportion of his touches are right out wide on the left and right out wide on the right. So basically, Coventry's build-up going down the left side with Bidwell and Mason Clark and Redoni, and down the right side with Van Evik and Sakamoto and Redoni. And it's quite a modern number 10 role, this. You see it quite often where we think of the number 10 as being like it's sort of fixed behind the striker, between the lines, between the width of the posts almost, or at least the width of the penalty box. But actually, it's mainly about kind of drifting all over to add an extra body and a bit of extra quality and drag defenders over that side. And it seemed to have worked. He also had the most touches inside the box on the pitch on Saturday. So it's quite nice when you've got someone who can be combining in build-up and helping out in build-up and also crashing the box and attacking the box. That's where we know Redoni can be dangerous as a goal threat as well. And it made me think of that Callum O'Hare role when he was playing at Coventry. He would also do all the wide build-up stuff, but instead of crashing the box and scoring goals, he was more about kind of threading through balls. So it's a little bit different to the O'Hare role, but some similarities as well. And with 7 goal contributions, non-penalty goal contributions, Redoni only Finn Azaz has more if you strip out strikers and wide forwards from the Championship. So he's doing very well on that front and chipping in with goals, which I think Frank Lampard will appreciate just as much as about anyone. Hull 0, Blackburn 1. Let's do Rovers first here. There's plenty on both teams, I think. Blackburn into the top 6 after this win. And I've never really known what rearguard action means, George, like specifically, but I think this Blackburn performance kind of epitomised it.
It's funny this, because Blackburn started the season being very unlike what I thought we were going to see from Blackburn under John Eustace. So they were pretty entertaining. Their games were fairly lively, really good constant attacking threat, not great defensively, pretty chaotic games. Slowly but surely, we are seeing what we thought we were going to see, which is a side who are very happy out of possession, who don't give much away, who don't necessarily create loads themselves, but are always in games. And that has yielded 4 consecutive wins, the last 3, all of them by a 1-0 scoreline. This was a game where they went ahead with, I think, basically their first kind of foray forward at a time in the game where neither team had really created too much, with the McLaughlin own goal diverting home across from the right-hand side. And from then on, Hull were the dominant force in the game. They dominated possession. They had some relatively good chances to score without being necessarily creating great chances. Abu Kamara was pretty lively coming in from the right-hand side. He had one chance. It was kind of a close-range chance that Pears did well to save, but it was kind of a point-blank save. And they scored out the game relatively comfortably without really having much of the ball or having any more chances. And that is kind of what we saw from them against Leeds last time out, where they were the better team. They did to Leeds what not many teams have done, where they went ahead and then suffocated them, but then also had probably the better chances at 1-0 to go win the game 2-0. So really impressed by what we're seeing from Eustace. It feels like he, after those 3 defeats in a row, he's worked on a way to make a quick fix, and it's working well. For Hull, as we'll get on to, it's another game where they'll look at the underlying numbers in-house, they'll look at the possession numbers and everything else and wonder how they've lost it, because Blackburn didn't offer a great deal going forward.
Yeah, it's classic Eustace now, as you say, that this is not a team that takes very many shots, but they do create good chances when they do, and they do attack really nicely when they have the opportunity, particularly quick transition attacks on the counter-attack or when they win the ball in midfield. It's really good to watch. Some of the goals that they've scored have been absolutely excellent. And then you look at the fact that their XG per shot against is among the best in the league, and that's not a surprise. That's good shape, and it's really good, strong penalty box defending. Those two things combined make them a really tough nut to crack. And I think you look at the partnerships through the spine of the team with Hyam and Danny Bart, the centre-backs, with Travis and Tronstadt, who have been absolutely brilliant as a midfield too this season. And then, in the front line, Cantwell's really made that spot his own and is combining beautifully with teammates at times. Dolan, I love, and I love this team for him and for the sort of player that he is. Hedges obviously chips in quite a lot. Or Hashi's not scoring very much, but it's still part of that front line. So really impressive. And, I always like to big up the good academies as well. And I did note that Rovers tweeted that Saturday's game was their 700th consecutive league game with an academy product named in the matchday squad. 700 in a row, which I love. As for Hull, they've hit the bottom George, they are winless in 11. They have lost their last 6. They have appointed Ruben Sellers. Let's get into it. What's your initial reaction to them turning to Sellers and coaxing him away from Reading to help keep them up and beyond?
Couldn't love it anymore, probably. No, that's not to say it's going to be a success, but I think in terms of if I was in charge of appointing a manager for Hull, I think Ruben Sellers would have been the first person I called. I was on 5 Live on Saturday, and I said there, like, since he came in to since he came into Reading, I don't think there are very many managers in football that I know of who've done a better job than him. And normally people will judge a manager based on league positions and promotions and the rest of it, but there's a lot to be said for someone coming in to a club going through a total crisis, a crisis which has lasted the entirety of his tenure, over 18 months, who's seen key players taken away from him at crucial times, Tom Holmes and McIntyre in January, albeit one of those loaned back, Femi Aziz in the summer, having basically no opportunities to strengthen their side whatsoever. Chem Campbell, the only addition that came in the summer on loan due to the transfer embargo. Having to manage the fans as well, because at points, especially during the failed Rob Couhig takeover, Ruben Sellers was the mouthpiece for the club who had to communicate with the fans as to what was going on behind the scenes. He's had to manage the morale of a fan base and playing staff during a period of existential crisis. And added to all of those great kind of personal touches, and Theo Walcott, who I was on, bit of a name drop, but who I was on 5 Live with on Saturday, spoke at length about how good, because he worked with him at Southampton, he honestly couldn't have spoken more highly of him as a man and a coach, and particularly the way that he spoke to his players. On top of all of that, he built a really good football team, a team who play exciting football, high energy football, loads of goals at both ends, who's developed who's developed certain players such as Abashaman and Bindon, and guys who realistically, if it wasn't for an off-field crisis, probably wouldn't be playing regular EFL football at League One level, and has turned them into saleable assets, which Reading fans are just praying won't be sold off under the ownership of Dai Yong in January. I think he is hot property, and I'm not surprised, because even though Hull have this reputation of being a bit of a crisis club under Ashun Ilushali, I do think that he will support. He has ambition, and he will support whoever comes in there. I'm a little bit surprised maybe that he's gone to a side who are currently rooted to the bottom of the Championship, because I don't think he'd have had to wait particularly long to get an opportunity with a side that maybe have aspirations more immediate of getting promoted out of the Premier League, for example, out of the Championship. For example, if Michael Carrick were to go to, let's say, West Ham or Wolves fairly recently, surely he would be right at the top end of the list, or would have been for the Borough job. But either way, I think it's a great appointment, and someone who has had to fight much worse fires than he is coming into at Hull, despite fans obviously feeling like the club is in a bit of a desperate state right now on the pitch. Yeah,
I think rather than Hull being perceived as a crisis club, I think just messy. It's probably one down from crisis, isn't it? It's like it's just been messy under Ilushali. His comms have been dramatic and ambitious, as you say, but seemingly without a huge amount of consistency to it, which has kind of, to my eyes anyway, flooded throughout the club. It's affected recruitment and squad building. It's affected managerial appointments and managerial support. Tim Walter was a poor appointment. He was also not helped very much either by the context around his appointment. Hull's pretty impressive league position under Rosenior, and talk about all this beautiful, exciting football, which is just puts a manager on a hiding to nothing. And then the fact that they started the season about 8 games late because they couldn't do the squad building properly over the summer because things were turning over too much behind the scenes as well. So a messy club, I think, and a club that's right at the bottom of the league with quite a lot of work to do. I think what's interesting is that agree with everything you said about Sellers. I listened to you on 5 Live. You were excellent, but what Walcott said really stuck with me all weekend. I was like, this is Theo Walcott, who is playing in his last season as a professional player, having played under some incredible managers, playing for a Southampton side that had a disastrous season, got relegated when they weren't expecting to, And this guy, Sellers, who had only come in the summer before, so was only ever at Southampton during one horrific season. And yet Walcott is talking about this guy in like the most glowing terms possible. You know, it really does make you think that there's something pretty special about him. At the same time, we should say he joins a really competitive championship with a ton of really, really good managers. And managers don't have a magic wand. So what's also important when we talk about Hull and Ruben Sellers isn't just about how good we think he is. It's about how bad Hull are or aren't. So let's hit the FOTMob corner button. Let's ask you, how bad are Hull? And then I'll talk a bit about how I think Ruben Sellers might approach things tactically and in terms of personnel and some of the squad members that might enjoy playing under him and develop under him. So, I mean, 6 defeats in a row, bottom of the table. How bad are Hull City right now?
Great question. And we'll give them the kind of early FOTMob treatment by just looking through the stats that FOTMob provide on teams. And I think the important thing to note, first of all, is in terms of the kind of very basic stats we're going to look at, their goals conceded per match has them 16th. And in clean sheets, they have kept just 1. So in terms of conceding goals, things are quite clearly going wrong, despite having an average possession that has them 4th. So basically a lot of the ball, conceding loads of goals. Looking at the kind of goal output, normally when you've got a team who are really struggling, who are bottom of the table, they will be flagged for either having really poor XG for, really poor XG against, or in quite a lot of cases, both. Hull ranked 13th for expected goals for, 0.8 expected goals less than Sheffield United, who are currently top of the table with a 2-point deduction. So that, to start with, is pretty nuts. Sheffield United's 23.8 XG has equated to 27 goals. Hull's 23.0 XG is equated to 17 goals, so a 10-goal swing there, which suggests that, you know, maybe at some point they might be able to hit the back of the net more often. But as you may come on to, it does feel like there is maybe a lack of goal scorer within their squad. And that is reflected as well by their shots on target per match, which is 20th in the league with 3.6, and their big chances missed in the league, they rank 6th with 26. So a team that aren't creating loads, but very, very few shots on target, so not testing the keeper much, and also missing proportionally more big chances than you would anticipate. So issues from a finishing perspective. XG against, they also rank 13th. So a team who rank 13th for XG for, 13th for XG against, you wouldn't anticipate would normally be 24th. And again, that is reflected in the fact that they've conceded 27 goals from their 24 XG against. So not a massive underperformance, but still relatively significant. If you take Swansea, for example, 27.5 XG conceded, 18 goals conceded, again, a 9-goal swing. So in both boxes, you know, the execution of both scoring goals and letting goals in is what is fundamentally letting Hull down. And you mentioned the 6 defeats in a row. Before I hand over to you, I'm going to run through all 6 and the stats around them. And this paints a picture to me that if I was Ruben Sellers, I'd be pretty optimistic. It started with a 1-0 defeat against Oxford away from home. I watched that game in the first half. It was an absolute demolition from Hull at the hands of Oxford, who weren't able to put their chances away. They won the shot count 12-4. They won the XG 1.12 to 0.6. They lost the game 1-0. Next up, they hosted West Brom. They won the shot count 13-5. The XG was basically a tie, 1.16 to 1.17. They lose the game 2-1. Baggy scoring 2 goals from 5 shots. They then went to Luton. Luton had 7 shots. Hull had 14, so they won the shot count there as well. The XG in their favour, 1.55, 0.83. They lose the game 1-0. You then have 2 poorer performances. The home defeat against Sheffield Wednesday, where they were well beaten. I watched the game. They were second best throughout, 2.16 to 1 in Sheffield Wednesday's favour. And then I think you can excuse them a 3-1 defeat at Borough. But again, that stat's not overwhelmingly against them. 21 shots to 10, yes, but the XG 1.84 to 1.21. And then finally, they lost to Blackburn. Blackburn over the weekend, Blackburn only having 5 shots, they concede an own goal, they have 14, 6 on target, they win the XG count 0.96 to 0.3, they lose the game 1-0. So in those 6 defeats, I would say there are 2 genuine pretty bad performances, or not even pretty bad performances, just the other team have been better and beaten them. But there is an argument that they've deserved not just a point, but possibly all 3 points in the other 4 games, and yet have come away with nothing. Now, there's more to football than XG, as we always say with FOTMob Corner, but it is still indicative. It is still useful to look at. And if there is a team, what this leads me to believe, Ali, is that if there is a team that is more ripe for a new manager bounce, and by new manager bounce, I mean they are due results to go their way, regardless whether Ruben Sellers sits in the dugout or not, then it is Hull, because they are not as bad, I don't think, as the bare results suggests. And in appointing someone who I think is very good at his job, I don't think it'll be long before we're talking about an upturn in results for Hull.
Yeah. The biggest issues for my eyes are things of almost a non-technical nature, right? Issues of team personality, cohesion, consistency, confidence, those sorts of things. And we've all seen a million times in football how big an impact a new manager can have on improving those things, and particularly if what, for example, Theo Walcott said about him is true, and as a people person, first and foremost, he's excellent. That could be, the first thing that's needed. And then on top of that, what's the team going to look like? How are they going to play? Well, actually, I don't think they're reinventing the wheel. They're not lurching from one philosophy to another here. If Tim Walter's football, as we understood it, whether we actually saw it or not is a different question. If we understood that it was heavy metal football, heart attack football, whatever it was, going to be quick and very fluid and positionally flexible and exciting and with lots of shots and lots of attacking intent. We didn't really see that consistently, but I would say that fits the bill for Ruben Sellers as well. Tactically, his time at Reading was mostly interesting for me because when he was hired from Southampton, he was kind of pigeonholed and described as being a bit Red Bull, right? A bit Red Bull Southampton as they were under Ralph Hasenhüttl. He was going to play 4-2-2-2, the Leipzig style, and it was going to be, heavily counter-press based, transition, quick attacking football. And that is how he started with the 4-2-2-2, and it went badly. Really badly. His first games, understanding that Reading were having big issues off the field, had a points deduction, had their confidence knocked. But the first almost 20 games, 5 wins, 2 draws, 12 defeats playing in that formation, 0.89 PPG. They were really, really poor. And then he changed the shape almost exactly a year ago, actually, made a big, big change. Well, it's not a massive change in tactical terms. From 4-2-2-2, he took out one of the strikers, put an extra player in midfield, a lovely, lovely 4-3-3, and stuck with that since. Results have changed. 20 wins, 13 draws, and 12 defeats for Reading in League One since then. 1.62, broadly playoff level form. And it was, nothing particularly wacky in this 4-3-3. There's a reason it's probably the most popular formation in world football, and certainly in the EFL right now. It was fullbacks that supported attacks, weren't completely gung-ho. One of them often tucking in, Craig getting on the ball quite a lot and helping with build-up, and on the other side, the left-back often kicking on and getting forward and joining attacks. He had a sitting midfielder in Lewis Wing, and then box-to-box number 8s getting forward, often Elliot and Savage or Elliot and Nibs. He likes, athletic central midfielders that have the stamina and the athleticism to get box to box, but also, got a lot from the technical quality of Wing and the other two midfielders, because his midfielders notably play a lot of through balls, and I think that underlines what he likes to do. He likes intensity and hard running off the ball. On the ball, he wants people that can make decisive actions. He's not necessarily looking for players who just want to circulate the ball and look after it and build up slowly. He wants through balls. He wants attackers that get shots off. He wants wingers that can be direct. He wants quick attacking play, basically, testing the opposition back line regularly rather than spending ages building and building. And what I'm excited about is one of the features of his Reading teams was he got goals from his central midfielders, Wing obviously with his screamers from range, but also Elliot and Nibs and Savage have all chipped in. He gets goals from his wingers as well. Chem Campbell's got a couple this season. Kamara scored the other day. Nibs, when he plays wide, has an excellent goal-scoring record. And the striker Sam Smith also had a decent goal-scoring record as well. So lots of different ways of getting goals from his team. That's what Hull City need as well. In terms of players I'll be watching closely, looking at the whole squad, I mean, it's a bit of a mess. There haven't been many players that you'd highlight as having performed particularly well this season. Unsurprisingly, they are bottom of the league and they've been inconsistent. But I think, if you're looking at players that thrived under Sellers at Reading, I would start with the centre-backs Bindon and Bengay. Neither of them had played a huge amount of senior football, both very young, developed an excellent partnership where Bengay was aggressive, front-footed, always stepping out to engage, and also, cracking on with the ball as well, getting forward, carrying it forward in attack. Whereas Bindon was more the last line of defence, more the penalty box defender, the aerial, the stronger aerial defender. I'm definitely looking at Charlie Hughes here as a potential huge beneficiary of this. If he can play a similar role as Mbenge, get on the ball a lot, I think he could have a good time under Sellés, and it should be a manager that benefits him. I think it's good news for Ryan Giles as well. Obviously, hasn't really been in the team much this season. I think it's only 7 starts. Cody Drameh, who's a right back, has been preferred over him at left back, which doesn't reflect that well on Giles. But I can't see Sellés preferring a right footer like Drameh at left back. I think he'll encourage the attacking output that Giles can bring, and I expect that he'll be a beneficiary of this appointment too. In midfield, they've got quite a lot of central midfield options. Some of them I just haven't quite nailed down yet in terms of their quality and even their profile. Zambrano's outbanned at the moment. But in terms of the sort of midfielders that I perceive Sellés to like, I'd expect to see Xavier Simons, continue at the base where he's been good this season. Regan Slater, I expect he'll like a lot for his kind of stamina, his tenacity. And then for me, it's kind of like +1. Will that be Puerta? Will that be Mellum? Will that be Steven Alzat, who I'd love to see a bit more of, a player that I like a lot? I think, there's plenty for him to work with. It'll be just about finding the balance, the cohesion in the midfield if we expect them to play that 4-3-3. They've got problems out wide with the injuries to Bellumi and to Liam Miller. So it's a lot of minutes for Abu Kamara at the moment. But I do think that Sellés will be a good manager for him, and I expect his output to improve. And then it's Ryan Longman and maybe Ormure battling for the other minutes there. It's not a great situation for Hull, nor is it good through the middle at the top of the pitch, where Beddy has had 9 starts, then lost his place. Joao Pedro's had 7 starts, some good stuff, but a lot of nothingness. Burstow's had 2 starts as well. I think that Chris Beddier might end up being Sellés' starting striker, might find his way back into the team. I think he wants strikers with intensity, strikers who run in behind, get on the shoulder, get on the end of through balls. And I think of those 3, Beddier is most likely to fit the bill there in terms of profile. Then again, Burstow's youth and his sort of, given his youth compared to the other 2, his pliability in terms of coaching and development might appeal to Sellés, who's a guy who clearly loves coaching. So having analysed the squad, I think there's not great options at the top of the pitch for Sellés to work with, and need to get a lot from them. Not particularly stacked in defence either, I wouldn't say, and his Reading team were quite leaky, I think it's fair to say. I think there's a chance he can get a back 4 that's pretty good in terms of what they can offer on the ball and progression, Hughes and Giles in particular, but defensively I'm a little bit concerned that they need to plug some gaps. I'm not sure if Sellés is an obvious manager to do that. And then the midfield balance, which I think needs finding, but I would back him to do that. So I'm excited about the Sellés era at Hull. I was going to say the only way is up, given that they're bottom of the league, but that's not how it works. They could just get relegated, then the way would be down. But at Reading, he achieved a lot of on-pitch coherence in a chaotic situation, and that's obviously the job here. So I think it's fair to say we're both pretty excited to have Sellés in the Championship and to see how this goes. Thank you to FOTMob for sponsoring FOTMob Corner, allowing us to dig deeper into various footballing topics each week. Download FOTMob and it will be your favourite football app. Download it. It's in the show notes, the link. Get on it. Now, George, to crack on with the Championship, couple of home wins. What about Leeds 2, Derby 0? That's 8 league wins in a row at Ellen Road, scoring 2 in every single game. 2 or more, I should say.
Yeah, dominant, as you probably expect Leeds to be against a side who are struggling a little bit in Derby. Albeit I was impressed by Derby last midweek in their defeat against Sheffield Wednesday. Definitely the better side in the first half. But Derby didn't have a shot until the 67th minute, and the game was basically done by the time they did. Great to see Joe Rodon scoring. He seemingly has a head the shape of a 50p piece. He missed an absolute sitter early on. Again, the ball kind of diverting off his head wide of the post, but a good finish for this one. I think you can see how much it means to him. It's crazy he doesn't score more goals given the positions he takes up from set pieces. And then Max Verber playing at left back, diverting home from close range just before half time. In the second half, they had some more opportunities to further their lead. Zetterstrom made a couple of really good saves, one in particular from Joel Piroux to keep it at 2-0. Derby barely threatened at all. It's going to be really interesting this midweek where, Leeds is dominant at home. We've spoken about a lot, and it is, as bad as Argyle are away from home, I think Leeds are almost that at home. They just completely stop teams from having any foothold in the game, both in terms of territory, possession and chances created. Yet they have Borough coming to town in midweek, who are a team that we know carry a big attacking threat. So whether or not Borough can manage to force their way into that game, I'm excited to see. I think we're going to see just how it's a bit of a clash between two teams that I anticipate will be in the automatic promotion chase come the end of the season. So but for Leeds, this is just, we've seen them do it against a few teams this season. Just get ahead early and see the game out with absolute comfort.
I would have liked to have seen a muted celebration from Joe Rodon, out of respect to anyone that's backed him to score in his 113 previous championship appearances. So I'm certainly on that list. And that was his 55th shot in the championship and his first goal. And he missed an easier opportunity before he scored that one as well. Sunderland beat Stoke 2-1. Entertaining game, won late by Tommy Watson. Sunderland... born and bred, Sunderland Academy graduate, has made his way into the first team due to Romain Mundle's absence and has made a massive impact and looks like the closest regen of Jack Clarke you could possibly imagine, in every possible way, in the way that he carries the ball, where he receives the ball, the way he takes defenders on, in his shots and his shot volume and his shot locations, and scored 2 great goals here. Well, the first one was an absolutely brilliant strike, hard and low, into Johansson's corner, and we know it takes a lot to beat Victor Johansson. The winning goal was deflected, which is what helped it get past the great man in Stoke's net. I mean, he had other chances as well. Watson, he had one really well saved by Johansson. He hit the post. He spooned one over the bar. It was probably the easiest chance that he had. He could have had a hat-trick here. It's so exciting for Sunderland. You know, you've got this team, already this super young team that is providing their fans a lot of joy, particularly at the Stadium of Light. And then you just add in, as if they needed another teenage sensation, Tommy Watson. And, you know, I just find this amazing. You've got him reminiscent of Jack Clarke. Then you've got, obviously, Job, who, unfortunately for him, because he wants to be out of the shadow of his older brother Jude, does look very like Jude Bellingham as a footballer on the pitch, and it's very, very difficult to forget that when you watch him play. Then obviously you've got another tribute act when Patrick Roberts plays like Lionel Messi, as he did here. It's just a team of tribute acts, and I liked it a lot. And look, they deserve the win. It came late, but there's no doubt about that. Kumas had put Stoke ahead on the break early on, but Sunderland, you know, they took 7 more shots in this game than any other this season. They had 4 shots on target more than any other game this season. Now, that's not unusual when you play against Stoke, who are a team that either by design or otherwise, they concede a lot of shots. The most in the league since Elek was appointed. He has been asked about it. Why does his team face so many shots? Is it a problem? He's not particularly fussed about it. He thinks it's kind of part of the process and the shift in out of possession tactical approach. I'll read some quotes from him last week because I thought it was really interesting. He went into some detail about it. He said, "Victor's in a great moment. I expect a great season from him. He'll need to appear because we concede shots. I want to concede fewer shots, but you need to bear in mind that the team was a man-orientated press, and now we have gone to the other thing." He was saying they're defending the space rather than the man. This is one thing we do in Spain. We defend space. Whereas in England, it's more common to defend the man and go into tackles all the time. It's a different culture. It takes time to go into this, and I saw that at Huddersfield and Norwich. At Norwich, after 5 months, it was difficult. We were 16th at some point and finished 6th. We were defending space and struggling a little bit, but it got better. It works. At Huddersfield, it worked very well. West Brom defend the space too. And if you see West Brom and Stoke, it's nearly the same style defensively. It's worked well there, and I expect it will work well here, but I want to reduce the number of shots. Yes, it will go down step by step as players understand more and more. They understand now, but it's one thing to understand and it's another to implement. There are mistakes in our game, our positioning and the small details that allow you to go very quickly to the box. But as well, when shots are taken, there are always bodies in between and we give the keeper a chance. It's quite an interesting one, this, George. It's like, I think we all agree that a new manager, one that joins with the season already underway, should be given a bit more time than they normally are to implement some of the things that they might want to do tactically, particularly large changes such as this. At the same time, it can be difficult when you're seeing your goal get absolutely peppered every game. They've conceded 25 shots or more in 4 league games already under Elek. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the reasons he gives sound fair enough. I mean, I'm not a professional footballer or a professional coach, so I don't really necessarily understand that transition as well as he makes out. And it's handy for him that he can point at two clubs he's worked at in the past where it's worked to an extent. It's his job to, when he's behind a microphone, to justify what his processes are, and it's not a surprise he can make a good case for it. But I definitely agree. I kind of think this season's a free hit for Nakis Pelak. Like, he should be given so long as Stoke don't slide into a relegation battle, I don't think it really matters what he does. He's a rookie manager. They've made the decision to appoint someone who's never done this job before at senior football or at this level, and he should be entitled to learn on the job and to have the time to instigate this within his players. But yeah, I mean, there are red flags at the moment. I don't know how long the transition should be in terms of we are going to change the way that we press. It's going to take some time. How long, realistically, is it going to take? Because he's been there a while now. But yeah, as I say, I think there's little reason for too much panic, albeit between, it's December now, between now and the end of the season, there have to be some signs of improvement, you'd think.
Yeah, 4 draws as well, and 2 games postponed. So the draws were West Brom 2, Sheffield United 2, Hegem from a set piece, then O'Hare and Campbell, a quick double blow for Blaze to put them in front. Both Burrows crosses at the heart of them. And then Tom Fellows deflected looper grabbed a draw for West Brom, obviously. They have now drawn 10 of their last 11 league games. 5 of 10 have been 0-0. In the other 5 draws, they've scored first and not won. They haven't conceded first in this run of 11 games and 10 draws. They have been behind twice here, obviously, against Sheffield United and Norwich, and come back to draw 2-2. I'm always confused about a team that draws this much. I'll lean on the numbers. What do the numbers say? They're not great. Still a top 8 defence in the league, unsurprisingly, with Corberan in charge. But the attack is pretty poor, pretty dull, pretty blunt. The third worst numbers in the league since the start of this run in terms of XG, non-penalty XG. So that is Corberan's biggest flaw. I don't think he's ever been able to maintain a team that looks excellent going forward for more than like a month or 2 at a time. But they're so good defensively that they're still not losing. It's just very, very bizarre. Obviously, they've slipped out of the top 6, but I'm sure this run can't continue for much longer. And Sheffield United, they are top of the table. They are the only team in the Championship to have been behind in games for less than 90 minutes this season. Incredible, really. They've been behind for only 76 minutes across 19 matches. Burnley Borough on Friday night. Wind played a big factor in this one. Burnley had it in the first half. Borough had it in the second half, and I think broadly the momentum of the game reflected that. I thought 2 of the least likely goal scorers pre-match would have been Anthony Dyke-Steele with a little dink over the keeper, played in by Barlasser, and then Connor Roberts from range. Dieng, I mean, it looks terrible for the keeper. Maybe it was windy, maybe it was just perfect trajectory, but it didn't look great. It was a fantastic battle between Ben Doak and Bashir Humphreys down Borough's right, Burnley's left. And Doak, as he so often does, had some sparkling moments. But I want to mention that Humphreys did incredibly well over the course of 90 minutes, won a lot of their battles, and also had a couple of half-decent moments going forward as well. 2 young loanees from elite clubs going head-to-head. It was great to watch. Luton drew 1-1 with Swansea. Swan's quite clearly the better side here. Only Kaminsky's good saves, stopping them from winning, and their own profligate finishing, which is a bit of an issue for them. Luton still playing poorly and looking just a bit befuddled. That they're a team that don't make a lot of sense to me, either on paper or when you watch them at the moment. And Sheffield Wednesday drew 1-1 with Preston. How on earth PNE weren't 3-0 up after 50 minutes, I don't know. And then they gave away a silly penalty, which was saved by Freddie Woodman, but it kind of allowed Wednesday to get their act together. They equalised not long after through Michael Smith. Danny Röhl fuming at their performance, saying, "We deserve nothing today. For me, Preston were the better team. They deserved to win, and we were very lucky." Preston, another very drawy team. 10 draws in their last 15 games since the first international break. 2 wins, 3 defeats, and those 10 draws. Incredibly dull for their fans, like results-wise, but I am still positive about their performances and the level of the team, and I think, therefore, Heckingbottom's impact since he was appointed. Their underlying numbers in that stretch are pretty mid-table-y. Don't create loads, but not nothing. Don't concede loads, but not nothing. And I do think Heckingbottom will steer them away from the relegation zone, or put a bit more distance between them and the relegation zone, I should say, if they keep performing like this. The issue is, it's just not very exciting. It's a fan base that is crying out for a bit of excitement. They've finished between 9th and 14th in 8 of the last 9 completed seasons. I'd be quite surprised if they hit that this season. So you can see why they're just generally a little bit bored. 2 games called off as well. That'll do for the Championship section. I'm off to change a nappy. Joining George for part 2 is the host of Football Weekly and What Did You Do Yesterday, Max Rushden. Before I go, I will just point out that George and I are both wearing not the top 20 hoodies. They are incredibly smart. George has just kissed the badge. I absolutely love them. I'm someone who, those who watch on YouTube know, try and wear a hoodie every day of my life if I could. And now I have NTT20 branded hoodies. The quality of the clothing made by Banana Moon, our partners on this merch, has been an absolute delight. They've been so great to work with, Banana Moon. They are, many of them, EFL fans based in Yorkshire, Bradford fans, Leeds fans, Huddersfield fans. The customer service and the kind of personal touches that we've had from them have been brilliant. And when you do pod merch, there's so many options for you. And so many of the options are you basically choosing bad quality in order for it to just be like automated and bad margins and all that sort of stuff. I don't think anyone really wins from that. So we decided to go with Banana Moon, and we're so happy. A couple of you have started to receive your items that you've ordered, and the feedback's been brilliant. So yeah, do check out the merch, the link in the description of the podcast, and yeah, dress yourself in head-to-toe NTT20.
Welcome back to Not the Top 20, and with Ali still negotiating the early days of fatherhood, I've called on a friend of the pod to help navigate my way through a blustery League One and League Two. Cambridge United fan and host of Guardian Football Weekly, Max Rushden is here. Max, how are you?
Hello. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I was just saying before, like, you've been on Football Weekly quite a lot, so I kind of owe you, you know. And as Ali is just embarking on what is simultaneously the best and worst decision of his and Mrs. Ali's life, I'm here to just say, I think it gets easier, and then I'm stupidly having another one. So, you know, I'm desperately hoping I can have a vasectomy, like a 2-for-1, as my wife is giving birth, that I could just get the snip at the same time, and then just that's it.
Have you asked?
I haven't checked. I don't know if the Royal Women's Melbourne does that, but you know, I think the idea is to not make it about you at this time. I think, George.
This kind of sounds like the third series of Colin from Accounts. That storyline. Yeah, it's weird shooting on the other foot. Me very much hosting, Max very much in the analysis chair, should we call it?
Yeah, this is where people find out I actually have no opinions and no thoughts on the game, you know. And it's not, the host position is not, people think it's the hardest one. It isn't. You just go, what do you think of that? If you're struggling, you go, that was a tough game, wasn't it? Brian, Barry, Jeff,
and then
whatever.
Yeah. Brian, Barry, Murphy. But then if you, as Ali has had to do for the last 8 years on our pods, he has to play both host and analyst, which is difficult.
Yeah, very hard role.
Not many people do that. I think this is the earliest. Ali and I probably, I dread to think how many hundreds, maybe thousands? No, it can't be thousands. But a lot of podcasts in the last 8 years. And this has to be the earliest I've ever recorded any of them. 7 a.m. UK time. But that, Max, is because you live in Australia. So what time is it with you?
Yeah, so for listeners who have no idea who I am, former voice of Gaviscon, sort of 2009 to 2014, I'd say, 2016. It was a good run. The cartoon fireman, that was me. Moved to Australia in 2021 maybe. My wife is Australian, and she spent a long time when we were living in London saying, why aren't we living in Australia? And I'd say, look, if I can get a job there, we'll go. But obviously there was no job I could do here. And, you know, The Guardian was 10 minutes up the road. TalkSport was 10 minutes the other way down the road on my bicycle. I had a lovely, easy life. You know, I wasn't going to go. And then suddenly I got offered the chance to host the Champions League for Australian television. And COVID had unlocked in the UK, but it was still locked down in Australia. So like the TV company rang me and said, look, we've found 2 flights. There are 2 tickets to get to Australia in the next month. And we've got them. So if you want the job, you've got 5 minutes to tell us. And we were there on holiday in Wales on a lovely beach called Rossley Beach. And we were like, oh. And my wife was like, actually, I quite like London. I was like, oh, you can't say that now. And we sort of thought, well, if we don't do it now, we will never go. And so we thought, sod it. And got on a plane, very weird plane ride, because we had to fly business.
You had to, did you?
We had to, yeah. There was no one. There was like 6 people on the plane because the numbers were so small. There was no one in economy. So when you opened the curtain, and I'm not a business class flyer, I'll be honest, seeing an empty plane, you just thought, this is a horror movie. this is really weird. And then we had quarantine, and then we were apart for 3 months because I had to stay in Sydney. But yeah, it's been, 3 years now? It goes fast, doesn't it?
Did you even... Because I think I probably speak for most people listening to this podcast, where I have, at any time in my life that I've considered moving abroad, probably the first reason why I think no is my football club and Oxford, and how I would really struggle to live apart from being able to go to games and having games going on at weird times. You support 2 football teams, which is should make it doubly hard, where you're a Cambridge fan and you're a Spurs fan. Yeah. Did that come into your thinking at all, or do you think almost by working in football and being surrounded by it, you're like, well, kind of do with being away from it?
If I'd said to my wife, I know you've lived in London for 10 years, but I really like football. She hates football, right? And she calls it the green. It's actually quite refreshing. She has no interest in anything I've ever done football-wise. Well, interestingly, Cambridge are my team. Let's be really clear about this. My dad is a Tottenham fan, so I like them, and so when they're playing, I want them to win. But they don't like when they lose. So they lost to Chelsea.
You don't bleed white.
I don't bleed white, and but also when Cambridge lose, I can't be depressed because that would be your whole life, right? So I'm sort of actually genuinely the thing I thought I would miss the absolute most is playing. So I played for a team called Polytechnic in the Southern Amateur League for probably 20 years. And that was my Saturday. So even when I was doing Soccer AM or when I was doing, TalkSport on a Saturday, I would then go straight to the Quentin Hogg Memorial Ground in Chiswick, or, Actonians away or Parkonians away or whatever. And that was my Saturday. So in terms of my love of Cambridge, I haven't been a regular match-going fan since the early 2000s, I'd say. So, I went... I went through the 90s, John Beck getting up from the 4th Division, 3rd Division, 2nd Division, the dirty long ball. I love channel ball football, hit the big man, Dion Dublin, John Taylor, Steve Claridge. I had all of that. And then I kept going. So sort of when I was at university, I'd always go back. But I'd say when I moved to London in sort of 2006-ish is I sort of just started playing. And so actually my biggest fear was losing that. And I found a team in Melbourne, the University of Melbourne Old Boys, the team I supported as a kid. That has genuinely, the love of that, of getting to play, of going to the changing room and all the cliches, the smell of deep heat, players you don't actually know their name after 2 years, you just know their nickname. The masses of tactics on WhatsApp groups that are just totally meaningless because you're all over 40, you can't move, and between the only time the WhatsApp really springs up is when someone's done their ACL, and then everybody knows because everybody in our squad has done something to their knee because they're all 40. Our oldest centre back is 62, and so that is the thing I genuinely thought I would miss the most. I was concerned about, obviously I have to watch so much football for my job, and I was interested to see how that would work. The one thing that is amazing about living in Australia is you can watch Match of the Day without knowing the scores much more easily because it's the night time. And so especially when it's sort of British summertime, it's it's a 9-hour difference. So it's like a 7:30 a.m. Match of the Day. You literally just don't even look at your phone, switch it on, and you're like, this is so exciting. Because you never... It's amazing.
That was most people's experience as a child, though, because you have the Sunday morning repeat of Match of the Day. So I used to wake up and not knowing the scores, or probably knowing the Oxford score, but then you'd watch it with your bowl of cereal in the morning. So are you doing that? You've got a bowl of Nesquik?
I've got the Kellogg's variety pack, and I've got some Ricicles, and I'm just there. So now I will probably just try and avoid the scores. The Australian Premier League stuff is pretty good. They when you log on to the stream, they don't show any of the scores. That's all hidden, and you can watch all the catch ups. But I think I'm really lucky because there are lots of expats listening to this show. We have a lot listening to Football Weekly. And I think homesickness is a really interesting thing. And actually, I feel myself getting more homesick the longer I'm away in a curious way, because you sort of start feeling anchored to this place and you do miss home. But where I'm really lucky is I spend so much time talking about something that's happening at home, just being in that culture. And I'm always on a Zoom call, and it's not quite the same as being in the room, but I'm always on a Zoom call with friends. I'm talking about football. And so that keeps me connected, I think, to the UK, probably much more than a lot of people who just move here as a doctor or a policeman.
And I guess there's always, given you're covering English football, you'd think there's probably always a job for you back here. You'd hope, anyway. If you want to come back,
I did by shamelessly plugging and even writing a column about it. I think at one point I've got myself back down to 8-1 for match of the day. It would be a surprise booking, but. And I've said this.
I wasn't even priced up, Max. What do you think of that? Unbelievable.
Outright. Richard Osman was 100-1. Here's what I've realised about. I think this sort of got me in. Not. I don't think it's. I think people sort of keep it a secret. But in all my experience of everything that I've done, from hosting live football to a show like Soccer AM to every TalkSport show I can think of, to news and current affairs shows, to the podcast I do with David O'Doherty now, which is, what did he do yesterday? It's nothing to do with football. The easiest thing that I have done is live football, because people aren't turning on for you, right? If AC Milan are playing Real Madrid, I don't think they're going, oh, Max is on. I think they want to watch the game, and the pundits are there and they want to talk. And as opposed to, say, Soccer AM, where you might have like a band member who, you've got like a 21-year-old indie band who are hungover from the night before, a young footballer, you're trying to do comedy sketches and all these things. And, it's for you to decide whether you thought the comedy sketches were funny or not. But like all those things, actually live football is just, what did you think of that? I'm not saying it's like totally straightforward, but in my experience, actually, match of the day, you do 2 minutes and then you have 5 minutes off. It's fine. Whether I get the gig, that's not how I'd pitch it when I sit for the interview. But yeah, I'm interested. I'm not ruling myself out.
It's been a while since I've done. There was a period of time Ali and I did a lot of live TV work on the highlight show and also on Sky Sports, and we haven't done any for ages now for various reasons. And I find TV stressful, where like there were some moments. I guess it's kind of slightly imposter syndrome, where like standing in the tunnel at Wembley with Don Goodman live on Sky Sports, where suddenly I was just like, what the hell am I doing here? Or like sitting in the studio doing EFL highlight show, sitting next to like Danny Cowley or Ian Holloway talking about League Two games. It's just like you almost, and obviously like incredibly privileged and lucky to do it, but like there were moments where I almost felt like I was on the other end of the camera thinking like, how did this happen? How did this get to this?
Yeah, I suppose because my first ever TV gig was Soccer AM, right, which is ludicrous, and I had no audition and no pilot, as anyone who watched the first year or two would sort of attest to. I just sort of got over that because I just couldn't not. Yeah, and so, like, of course it was surreal, because sometimes you'd just be in an ad break, you'd look back and you'd have Brett Ormerod, Mr. T, and Noel Gallagher sitting next to you, going, well, these three people will never sit next to each other in any other walk of life. And so you just sort of get used to it. And then I know what you mean. It is ludicrous, and actually I think it is really important, because I don't often have conversations exactly like this, where I'm like, I've done enough podcasts about, tell me about your life. Yeah. And I know that isn't the point of this one. But like, it's actually important.
What did you do yesterday?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of childcare. The important thing sometimes is to reflect and go, shit, you are getting paid to talk about football. And like the magic does go a little bit from the game, because, you are meeting lots of footballers, and some are nice and some aren't, and some are interesting and some aren't, like any walk of life. And it's also your job, right? So when you're just like, oh, I'm exhausted. So like a lot of my work now is in the evenings, and like, so I do TalkSport on a Saturday and Sunday night. And sometimes, Sunday I start at 10 p.m. and I'm like, But actually, like, the thrill of being on air never ever leaves you. And the privilege is insane, and I think I'm all right at it, but like lots of other people are all right at it. Like, you've got to be so lucky to carve out a way of earning a living doing it. And so like, it's good to reflect sometimes, to be like, I'm annoyed with this person about this little thing that happened on this show, but actually it doesn't matter, because I'm still coming up with like stupid jokes about, can I get a Wilfred and Didi gag in tomorrow or not? That's really silly, isn't it?
Yeah, I had a bit of a moment like that, not to bring up TalkSport's rivals, but I was on 5 Live Sport on Saturday, and I was on the Zoom call, and it was Chappers hosting, Stephen Warnock and Theo Walcott, and I was just like, this is great. Just, what a four-ball to be just kind of chatting about football with for half an hour. And there are times where you are right, we're very lucky and have to pinch ourselves, and there are probably people listening, hearing us kind of, well, me certainly, one little bit about it, who are saying, it's the dream, and I do accept that. We are going to get into the football in a second, for those who don't really care about me and Max talking about our lives. But I am intrigued, because, we're going to start with the Cambridge game in a second, and thank goodness it's worthwhile starting with it. It's not a boring game that we have to start because you're on the show. But I was wondering, because I was obviously following the games live. I was writing the running order for this kind of segment of the pod, and I assumed that you weren't up in the middle of the night watching Cambridge against Shrewsbury. So what do you do? Because I was thinking about this. The only two things I can compare it to are Ashes series where England are in Australia, where I find it very hard to sleep because every time I'm like partially conscious, I check the score. And like the American election, where I went to the loo like 7 times to check what was going on because the phone like otherwise would annoy my wife. So like how do you, because you're used to it, do you just sleep through the night and check the score when you wake up? Or are you kind of following it as you go?
So actually, the US election, Australia's the best place to be because it's all happening in the day. I mean, or worst, depending on who you supported.
Yeah.
And I wasn't necessarily supporting President Trump.
Mr. Trump.
But so here's what I do: midweekers, I watch them all live, and that's great. And even when I was doing the Champions League, which I'm not anymore, I would have I'd have the 8 screens with whoever sporting Arsenal and Liverpool, whoever, and then I'd have my laptop with Cambridge losing to Wigan or whatever, and it was nice because I could watch. We'd do the pre-match, and then we'd say and you'd hand over to the commentators in the way you have to, and now it's time, and your commentators are Sue Smith and Simon Brotherton, and then over to them, we'd sit on the sofa, someone would get you a coffee, and I'd come back and it'd be 15 minutes into the game, and I'd be like, oh, still 0-0, that's good. So now I watch all the midweekers. So I watched us get humped by Reading the other day. I watched us win at Stevenage. And actually our Tuesday night record, if you check it, is absolutely abysmal. I think we've won one in about 2 years. Like it is the last win, I think, before Stevenage might have been Wickham away, where we won 3-2. Could even be 2 seasons ago. Like it is extraordinary how bad we are on a Tuesday night. So I watch those ones. And what I do on a Saturday is when I wake up in the morning, so my son wakes up at 5:30, I get up with him. At some point, will open my phone and I will get onto the Cambridge United Twitter page and I'll close my eyes and I will scroll back loads, right? And then I'll do my own really, really laborious minute by minute. So I'm scrolling down, and it's genuinely thrilling way to do it. The only annoying thing is like, for me, I want them to sort of reverse it so the score is the first thing you see, because obviously you can see as you're scrolling down if there's a lot of replies or a lot of retweets, that's either good or bad news. That's like a big moment, so you go quite quickly, and the first thing you see is like a goal gif, and you're like, goal gif, great, and then you're like, this is so exciting. And so like it's very rare obviously that Cambridge win, but we did. So we won 4-1 against Shrewsbury on Saturday. So that is great, because most of the time we're probably at best 1-0 up with about the 75th minute, and then you start scrolling incredibly slowly because you're just like, oh fuck, it's bad. You can just feel it in your bones. And then the way that social media accounts are just so, and rightly so, they're just not asked about the opposition goals. It's just like 89th minute, whoever it is, Burton equalise, and you're like,
goal Shrewsbury.
It's just so depressing. So then if we've won, then it's quite fun. Then normally the post-match interviews haven't come through, the highlights haven't come through, so I have to wait a bit. But what I like to do, and I don't know if you do this or if other people, I'm a huge fan after a victory. I haven't done it yet with this game, but normally of going to the opposition's Twitter account to see what their manager has said. Because this is something that I hope you have noticed. Every EFL manager, this is, I think, bar none, when they have lost a game, the first thing they say is about how the opposition, like to get it long, like to play dirty football, like set pieces, as if like that is the only reason we lost is because these guys are just total anti-football bastards.
I think if Gareth Ainsworth said that, I think he'd have immediately combusted or something, because that would have been...
Yeah, you're right. He's the wrong person to pick. But so that's how I digest the Saturday games, because you're right. I thought about, do you know what? I thought about staying up for the Peterborough game, and I didn't. And we lost 6-1, was it? 6-0? So that was a good decision. I did stay up for Newcastle away in the FA Cup. And I was like, can I be bothered? We'll probably get out. And we won. And that was, Kieran Trippier's first game for them. And it was and that was one moment when I felt, that was the first time I felt like I'm not in the right place. Because I would have been there.
I'd love to see player cam of you on your own, watching that in the middle of the night with a sleeping child next door, having to ensure you didn't wake up wife or baby?
Do you know what? The most I've had to suppress a cheer is when Harry Kane scored the penalty against France, the one he scored. And my son was maybe 6 months old. We were back in the UK and sleeping upstairs. And it's really, you sort of give yourself a hernia if you cheer like you cheer, but without emitting the noise. It's so difficult. And
a regular back and forth in our house is me cheering and my wife telling me to shut up.
Yeah, totally. And the other brilliant one was like 2 years ago. Obviously, we've stayed up on the final day last 2 seasons. This season was a bit sort of meh. But the season before, the game's kicking off at exactly the same time as I was on TalkSport with Barry. And so we were home to, they were already relegated. I forget who it was. Forest Green, maybe? I can't remember. Or did they get relegated last year? Grimsby. I think it might have been Grimsby. No, I can't remember.
Forest Green got relegated season before last. I will find out as we go.
Yeah. So we were playing that
Forest
game.
Green, 2-0.
Yeah. But then MK Dons were at Burton and Accrington were at Exeter. And it was just like, I couldn't concentrate. I was trying to do like a show interviewing Premier League guests. And then I think Sam Smith scored like a Van Basten volley with his right foot. And I just cheered and by the end, it was just I couldn't concentrate on anything. The end of the show. And I'm just completely it's full time at MK Dons. The game's still happening there. I can see the Cambridge game because I can watch the games. Obviously I can watch all of them. And I'm is there a pitch invasion? I think Barry and Justin Morehouse were on just saying, MK Dons have scored. And I'm but they were bullshitting me, and it was just the exhaustion and the total delirium after that was amazing. But yeah, I probably go to as many games now as I did for the last few years. I'll try and get to a couple at the start of the season when I'm back over. But yeah, third round of the FA Cup. If we get a big one, I think I should get on a plane, but I don't.
My worst on-air story was 2 years ago. Maybe 3 years ago. I was in studio for 5 Live on the Saturday on the final day of the EFL season, and Derby conceded really late. I think the game finished 3-3, the game where they went down.
Yeah. And
the reporter said, the goal, they've scored, it's 3-3. And Aaron Paul was hosting, and he said, "George, what does that mean?" No. And I said, "Derby are relegated, that means." And then I realised there was still 5 minutes left of the game. And actually, if they scored another goal, they would have stayed up. And I just relegated them live on national radio. Oh. And I spent the next 3 minutes just watching the live text, just being please don't score, please don't score. I've relegated a team.
Oh, mate, that sounds like nothing. I've made so many worse ricks than that.
You keep having many more hours under the bonnet than me, to be fair.
Potentially.
But we need to, let's talk about the game itself, because 4-1, this was a resounding victory. A Shrewsbury side who are pretty buoyant after the appointment of Gareth Ainsworth, having beaten Moneybags Birmingham a couple of weeks ago. I have to say, I think the main reason for Cambridge's win in this game was probably the Shrewsbury keeper, Toby Savin, who didn't do much Savin when it came to the shots. Cambridge scoring their first 2 shots of the game, thanks to the man that Ali calls the truffle pig, because of the way that he hunts out goals, and Shane Lavery.
I can see that.
Cambridge fans.
I can see that. He hasn't done many, but maybe they have fallow seasons. There's a wonderful documentary about truffle hunters with really old Italian men. I really recommend it. It's amazing.
Have you seen the film? Is it just called Pig, the Nicolas Cage film about truffle pig?
I haven't seen that one, but yeah,
it's an interesting watch.
I'll check it out. Yes, he didn't have a good game. Toby Savin did not have a good game. And my takeaway is, I would worry for Shrewsbury. If we are hammering you, that is not a good sign for you, because we are not hammering many teams currently.
But it's been a pretty unbelievable season so far, because Cambridge on 1 point from 9 games, which is, I have a feeling if Cambridge stay up this season, it would be, because it was such a short amount of time, it'll be forgotten, but it'll be probably the most incredible survival story of any EFL team after 9 games ever. I can't imagine a team has ever been on 1 point from 9 games and stayed up before.
And if you remember the 1 point, we were 4-1 down at home to Blackpool, and we somehow drew 4-4. So we should have had 0 points. And it was funny because I watched the first few games of the season, and I think we were jet lagged for the first game, so it was Stockport away. And actually, we played quite well. Louis Barry scored a brilliant goal, and I was like, okay, we're moving it about. And the whole point was Gary Monk we were gonna play proper football, like tick-a-tack, play out. And then I think we did okay. We lost to QPR maybe, but we were unlucky in the Carabao Cup. And we're like, okay, this is good. And then you lose the next couple, but it's like, it's all part of the process. Then we got a few injuries. And then it was just like, oh, God. And I think last year I'd written a column about whether it would be funny if Luton got no points in the Premier League. Like, would they eventually, like, would it be a badge of honour? And there was like part of me after about 9 games going, would I like us to only get 1 point this season? Because like we had the record of like games without a win. Nick Hornby writes about it in Fever Pitch so that was before my time. But I thought it was a real badge of honour. And then Derby nicked it. I don't know if someone's nicked it off Derby, in the 11-point season in the Premier League. And so I was thinking, actually, what I loved was after every game, Gary Monk was just so like, yeah, look, it's all totally fine. And you're like, this has to end, right? Like, I don't like managers getting sacked as much as you don't, but I was like, I really like what he's saying. And then the board came out and said, and we are a brilliantly run football club, and we're really lucky. Like off the pitch, they are good at everything, as far as I can tell. If they do something different, they change the badge, they do proper, like they talk to the fans, they involve the fans in all the decisions, they really push the women's team. Like so much stuff at that club is great. But you're like 1 point after 9 games is not good, And the aspiration is to become a championship club, which is ambitious, I think, for a club of our size. But they came out and they said, look. We know it's shit, but like we're sticking with him. And actually, I think it's probably not necessarily the wrong thing to do. Look, I don't speak for all the fans. I know a lot have a problem with our recruitment. We don't recruit well, but we don't have much money. Like, have you ever? I always think about this with lower league fans. When your social media account goes, you're waiting for signings, and then it does, the clock's ticking, or like eyes looking that way for a signing, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm really excited, we're going to sign someone. The chances of having heard of that player is 0. Like, we did sign, I'd heard of Shane Lavery, and I'd heard of Gary Gardner, who's been injured all the time. It's like, but when you've heard of a player, like we had Lyle Taylor, which was a absolute disaster. He was a disaster for us. But like, I'd heard of him, but normally it's like, we've signed this person. You're like, well, it's meaningless to me.
But
like, totally
this is
meaningless.
It's something Ali and I have learned in the last 18 months since we launched our website, is that in January and in the summer, for a lot of football fans, transfers come first and football comes second. And I think it's all down to almost the thing that's definitely the generation younger than us love the most about football is finding a hero and being able to attach themselves to a hero who plays for their club. And I think every single new signing, even if it's a left back you've never heard of before, has the potential to maybe become that hero. And therefore, if you look at your current crop and you're like, I don't like any of these guys, then you're just absolutely thirsty for as many potential heroes as possible. And it is mad. Like, we do transfer content. But Ali and I aren't massive transfer guys. Like, I probably fall into the trap a little bit in January of getting quite excited. But, like, realistically, I care more about watching games. And I probably actually find managers more interesting than players. But when it comes to January in the summer, on our website, we do transfer content because it gets people to subscribe, and people absolutely love it. It's mad.
Yeah. And actually, the one thing is when you support a team who are, second or third bottom of League One or whatever we are, is a new signing, they might not be shit. That's what you're thinking, right? Yeah. This guy might not be shit, and how great would that be? And so, I mean, I quite enjoy it because I enjoy that the lower clubs try and do what the Premier League sides are doing. But it's like, it's sort of what they should do is we've signed someone, you won't have heard of him, but we think he might be all right. Like, what else can they do? Like, there's,
I always think it'd be quite fun. I mean, they'd never do it, but I would love it if it was like an embargo on signings, and for the first game of the season, like a Royal Rumble, you announced your squad, and people just ran out.
Barry said that.
Who have we got next?
Barry said that. Like, it wouldn't be great for Jim White, but I wouldn't hate it. You just go, we've signed them. Like, whatever level it is, that would be great. I totally agree. But like, we don't have a lot of money. We're well run. I think there are 6-7 teams that could go down from League One, and we are definitely one of them. And if we get some injured players back and we get a bit of luck, you never know. But like, it's gonna go to the wire, I would think.
People behind Monk, what's the general feeling? Because he's an interesting profile where there was a time 3 or 4 years ago, maybe a bit longer, 5 or 6 years ago, where he was as hot a property as an English manager really could be in the EFL. And then he had a long hiatus out of the game. He's turned up at Cambridge, hasn't done particularly well until recent weeks where things have kind of turned around. Has he got the support of the fan?
Yeah, I would say he's probably not the hottest ticket in English
Not
management
now. No.
currently. I listen to the brilliant Under the Abbey Stand pod quite a lot, and I really enjoy it. And I would say, like, I am behind him, but I don't think they universally are. But it's a question of, like, what are you going to do if you get rid of him? What are we going to do? Get a bald old man to play long ball, or like there's just no guarantee.
He's
like,
actually bald.
Yeah, they have to be. That's what you do. You either get one of them, and then you fit to another one who likes to play football. Then you just go back and forth. So I think we've been a bit unlucky with injuries. We are just like expectations are funny, aren't they, with football fans? Because everyone's expectations are just mostly ridiculous. Like, and you look at all your games in hand, and you just add 3 points for all of them, as if they're just absolutely given as victories. You look at you just say, if we just win every game in December and January, this could look different. But like, you're kidding yourself. But like, that's sort of the only way that you sort of survive. So I would say it's pretty mixed. The crowds are good. Like, we're getting 6,000 plus every home game, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And I think the players are still behind him. Like, I really feel that. And I think, like I said, we need a bit of luck, or we need some mad January, or just some rich oligarch.
So here we go. We fall into the trap again. We said we didn't care about transfers. You're now saying we mad January, then we win all our games February to May, and we finish the playoffs.
Yeah, but like an oligarch who's nice, I would say. One of those good ones. That's what we need.
Right.
Yeah. If you can find one of those.
Are there many of those around?
Who
knows?
So.
Probably. Cambridge currently 22nd in the league now, so 3 points off Crawley, who are in 20th. So it 1 point from 9, 16 points from 18. I think there are signs that Monk is starting to get his way and starting to get this team performing the way that he wants them to. We'll now fly up to the top end of the table, where Birmingham went to Barnsley on a very blustery day and beat them 2-1, having been behind in part thanks to Adam Phillips' red card. But realistically, this was all about Jay Stansfield, who a lot has been said, and a lot of it has been written about him and the transfer. But in terms of his actual quality, it's becoming very, very evident how good he is. And in particular, the first goal here was just an absolutely ridiculous goal for the level, just picking up the ball, driving through midfield, and then unleashing an absolute screamer into the top left-hand corner. And it was him popping up the back post to get the winner to win the game 2-1. Really difficult conditions, a very tough place to go. Barnsley making it very difficult for Birmingham, especially in the first half. But Birmingham eventually turning the screw and getting the win. You mentioned a second ago, Max, that the aspiration for Cambridge is to be a championship club. And I have received personally a lot of stick from Birmingham fans for questioning the signing of Stansfield and the amount of money they spent in the summer. Not in a way that I think they should be punished or they broke any rules or anything, just purely that I kind of find it a bit troubling when you've got a League One side spending to this degree, because it does create a bit of a false economy within the league, and it kind of encourages teams that maybe can't afford to keep up with them to do so in order to try and be competitive. Just in order to try and get the Birmingham fans off my back and onto yours. How do you feel about it?
Well, if we were doing it, I'd be delighted. It also I'd be very confused. I'm absolutely certain if you added all the transfer fees Cambridge have ever paid in the history of their, of our existence, I'd be amazed if it reaches anywhere near £20 million. I think the most we've ever paid for a player was Steve Claridge for about 250. I might be wrong, and I suspect actually it's more than probably 6 or 7 teams cumulatively have ever paid. For their entire squad in the history of not net spend, obviously, but just spend. And so obviously it's ludicrous. But I suppose why not? It's right. The first goal was great. The second goal is just sort of lurking at the back post. It does make me want them to definitely not go up. That's how I feel. I had no skin in the game with Birmingham. I thought getting rid of Rowett. I meant to interview him for Sky years and years ago when they were 7th. They sacked him the next day, and I was like, "Yeah, lovely guy," and Cambridge legend, of course. And I just thought, well, that's mad. But yeah, I'd be delighted. I mean, I was not happy when Shrewsbury beat them because I don't want teams down there to win. But I would love it if they didn't go up. I'd love it if Wrexham didn't go up, even though that's a lovely story and their owners are nice. I'm just. You always want the underdogs to win, don't you? So spending that amount of money on a footballer is silly. but he is really good. And if it was my team, I'd be very happy if they did it, but slightly surprised. Like, there's just no world where you'd spend 20 million on a player. It's like more than, so say it's more than Chiesa. It's more than Liverpool spent on Chiesa. That's your line, isn't it? But I think it was just like, okay, that puts it into some perspective. So like they should run away with it if that's what they're spending.
Should say here as well that the 20 million is disputed. I would say reputable neutral journalists report 15 rises to 20. Those closer to the club suggest it's less. So
okay,
choose who you want to, but I think it's 15 rising to 20. Birmingham up now to third. They've got a couple of games in hand on Wrexham and a game in hand on Wycombe. And what that means is, given they're only 1 point off top spot, if we were to work out the league table by points per game, which would actually give a more accurate representation of where teams are, Birmingham would be top now. But Burton, Wrexham, you mentioned Wrexham there. This was a pretty bad game, I would say, decided by a goal direct from a corner. Wrexham beating Burton 1-0 thanks to Elliot Lee. There's an amazing reverse angle of this corner that I sent over to you, Max, where you see just how far away from the goal.
So it goes over the halfway line, doesn't it? And then comes back in. Yeah.
Are we giving him any credit for this?
Well, you've got to put it in the right area. I think, is he the guy that scored for Luton from inside his own half against us, like a different postcode, literally a different postcode. Yeah. So
he's very good. He played
he's a good player.
He's a mercurial footballer, I would say.
Yeah, so no, we'll give him some credit because you've got to get there. But there was a lot of window sitting. Something I quite liked about this, because I don't often watch all the highlights from League One and League Two, is I love shit. I just love. I mean, like, I don't know if there's a positive, but like shit ground, shit football. Like it's said with love.
Not me.
Said with love, right? And also something I do miss is that broad daylight first half, and by full time just pitch black. This is winter, windy winter. You said Barnsley was tough. I was trying to work out what is the saddest game to have been at. The saddest stadium, maybe Wigan, because it's such a big ground, and there's sort of, so it just looks so empty and so bleak when it gets sort of like towards the middle of the second half and it's dark. So yeah, I was pleased Wrexham won that.
It's terrible that it was dark at Wigan in the weekend, given it was a 12:30 kickoff. So it's getting dark there at about 1:30.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is hard. It's it's north, isn't it? It's like the Arctic Circle. What are you going to say? Yeah, I'll give him 6 out of 10 credit.
6 out of 10. I mean, there's an amazing quote from him after the game, which is both funny but also is a really badly disguised attempt from Lee to actually claim that he was shooting, where Lee basically gave credit to Phil Parkinson, the manager, by revealing that at half-time, or maybe before the game, Parky instructed his players to, and I quote, just shoot due to the high winds, which is amazing. Because firstly, that is an unbelievable bit of advice for a manager to give his team and then be given credit for it afterwards. But also that's Lee saying, without saying, I was shooting, which is great. So
I think Vincent Tan, when at Cardiff once, I can't remember who told us. Which footballer told me? It might have been Robbie Earnshaw. I can't remember. Like when he went up to one of the keepers and said, look, we've had a think. We think you should shoot. Just wanted everyone to shoot all the time at Cardiff, like every player at any time to just shoot, which... I'm a big fan of, owners going to dressing rooms bad. Owners going to dressing rooms telling every player, including the goalkeeper, to shoot. Strongly in favour of that.
Yeah, I agree. Albeit I'm one of those XG nerds that hates shots from range. I'm the guy in the stadium and I'm watching lots of everyone go shoot. I go no.
Yeah. You can mix it up. You can mix it up, I think.
I mean, this is a continuation of Wrexham's kind of strange away performances, where at home they're very strong and score a lot of goals, and away from home their games are generally very low scoring. But it's another 3 points for them. It keeps them up in second and very much keeping pace with those at the top end. Another team in really good form is Huddersfield, who went to Mansfield and won 2-1. Difficult for Stags at the moment, who've lost 5 on the bounce. 7 wins in 9 unbeaten for Huddersfield. So it went kind of by the form book, I guess, but definitely not as simple as the scoreline suggests, with Chapman in goal for Huddersfield making a string of really good saves, and Huddersfield maybe not at their dominant best, albeit Josh Koroma with a really good assist for the first goal, scored by Ben Wiles, and a good finish for the second, having been put through by Danny Ward. There was nearly, in my mind, one of the best own goals I think I've ever seen. Very wind-assisted own goal late on with pretty much the last... Can you call it the last kick of the game? Because it came off his head. The last head of the game, where the second ball from a corner comes in. A Mansfield player kind of tries to head it back in the box. And Tom Lees is there completely unchallenged, with absolutely no need to head the ball whatsoever. And he tries, I don't know what he's trying to do, but he kind of heads it backwards unchallenged over the keeper and it cannons off the crossbar and comes out again and they blow for full time. Would have been hilarious.
No, I think all-time would have been funny, but I think all-time is just overstating it. When you think of the all-timers, when you think of Chris Brass, like kicking it into his face and breaking his nose, when you think of Wayne Hatswell steadying himself, letting the ball drop and then pinging it top corner, like the best own goals are when there's just sort of almost a goalkeeper scored one recently where
I saw that.
You've got the ball under control and then you smack it in. They mean so much more to me than okay, like it's windy and he's got to jump. I'm saying it would have been a good but not an all time. I think I'm accusing you of hyperbole there, George.
Maybe I like wind and you like just guys making bad mistakes and breaking their nose. I don't know what that says about both of us. Another own goal now. This one actually went in. Stockport 2-0 to 0. Tristan Kramer, who's been so strong for Exeter all season, had an absolute shocker here, scoring an own goal where the shot was parried into his path. And it didn't look like it was parried hard enough for him to basically lose control of his legs, but he did parry it into his legs and he kind of slotted the ball in from close range. And then it was he who made the foul for the penalty, which was dispatched by Louis Barry, who just continues to light up League One before surely, as is being reported, his imminent departure to probably a Championship club on loan in January, which will be a massive blow. He's been linked to Middlesbrough at the moment, where Louis Barry and Ben Doak on either wing is fairly exciting.
It's a different level, Louis Barry. It's a lovely player.
Correct. Yeah, really, really top player and someone who I'm excited to see where he goes because I think he really could be a player that forces his way up into the elite. Tricky this for Exeter, just 3 shots in the whole game. Stockport bounced back really well since that 5-0 defeat at Wycombe. That's 4 wins from 5 since then, the only defeat coming away from Birmingham, which I think we can forgive them for. On to Wigan, that famous dark day at Wigan at 1:30 in the afternoon. Hosting Leyton Orient. Orient's very good week continues with back-to-back wins against Bristol Rovers and Wigan, 2 teams who kind of sit above them but are by no means safe from a relegation battle.
Yeah, why are Wigan bad, George?
It's a great question.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I mean, that's normally your job, isn't it? Sean Maloney, their manager, I think is quite good, or at least quite bright, but they were a side who started the season really strong defensively, but struggling to carry any attacking threat whatsoever. And it kind of feels like in the last couple of weeks they've tried to remedy that and have lost a bit of their defensive solidity. Although Telo Asgard is in pretty good form. It's kind of hard to put your finger on. I'd be surprised if they get sucked into a relegation battle, but they definitely need to score some more goals if they're going to be better. And I think their aspirations for this season were certainly not to be a team fighting off relegation, having done so successfully last season after a pretty big points deduction. The protagonist here was Jayden Sweeney, who it's interesting this because Leyton Orient signed Jack Curry from my club Oxford on loan at the end of on deadline day actually, and on the 31st of August, Jayden Sweeney started his last game before this one at left back for Orient, and I am 99% sure that Jack Curry will be recalled by Oxford on the 1st of January because the first game after the window closed, Joe Bennett, our current left back, injured himself relatively badly, so it was one of those annoying ones where we sent out a guy on loan and then actually needed him immediately. So my assumption is either Curry's got a slight knot or Orient just know that he's had a brilliant season for them. So basically know that he's not going to be staying. So decided to kind of go early and integrate their other left back. But Sweeney scored the first goal with a nicely, a close range finish. And then basically in exactly the same spot after half time, pulled off a really good goal line clearance. So a wonderful return to the team for Sweeney. But the goal we need to talk about, and I'm going to hand over to my wind correspondent here, Max Rushden, was the late goal from Jayasimi.
Now, I've watched so many goals that I'm trying to recall which one, but as far as I can tell, it's
You've written
massive hoof.
Max, big fan of this goal.
I was like an hour and a half ago. It's a massive hoof upfield, isn't it? That bounces about 5 times, and a few people just miss it, and then the keeper misses it, and then he just walks it in. Is that about right?
So Josh Keeley, who is the goalkeeper who scored the equaliser against Oldham in the FA Cup a couple of weeks ago, now has an assist to his name because he launched the ball, and clearly the wind was behind, and you've got a situation where it evades everybody and takes a huge bounce. You've then got the Wigan centre-back kind of telling the keeper to come for it. Wigan's keeper, Sam Tickle, is genuinely absolutely superb, and I'm sure will be probably a Premier League keeper in time. But there's a bit of misunderstanding.
Rooted. Yeah.
And then he comes late, and then the kind of defender and the goalkeeper come together and collide. and Jairzinho is there just to prod it home.
Yeah, I'd pay to see that goal. That's my kind of football.
And then a couple of draws. Obviously, I should have probably said this earlier on in the show for those who genuinely only listen to this podcast for their EFL fix. There are a lot of games postponed this weekend, and I can't be bothered to go through all of them. But there were two others that went ahead. Lincoln 0, Charlton 0 was a game that happened, and then Wycombe 1, Reading 1. Wycombe, their performances at the moment stuttering a little bit. They had that win over Mansfield, which came late thanks to a cross after a poorer performance. Here they've drawn 1-1 with the Reading side, who have just lost Ruben Sayers, with Noel Hunt appointed as new manager.
Have they? When did that happen?
Which bit?
The Ruben Sellers Noel Hunt thing. I've completely missed
that
this.
happened on Friday, I think.
Where's Ruben Sellers gone?
He's gone to Hull.
He's gone to Hull. Okay, that's just a good way to find these things out, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, I once got wildly drunk with Noel Hunt.
Yes,
one Saturday
great
afternoon. Yeah, I can't remember who else was there.
How was it?
Stephen might have been there, and another Irish footballer, and I can't remember them. But no, lovely guy, lovely bloke, Noel Hunt. And obviously got good, like a bit of a Reading legend. So wish him the best. I know he's got two good strikers because Sam Smith and Harvey Nibbs they got for nothing from us.
Yes,
and they both. Sam Smith almost scored, and then Harvey Nibbs did score in this game. But I know there are lots of problems off the pitch. So Noel Hunt is walking into that, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, probably unsurprising that he was immediately given a 2.5-year deal, basically as soon as Sayers decided to move on to Hull. Ali and I have discussed, to look behind the curtain, Ali and I will discuss, but you've already heard it if you're listening to this, the Sellers appointment at Hull. But it should be said, because it's important to keep talking about this stuff, that even beyond the Sellers leaving scenario, it's been a pretty difficult week, on top of about 100 difficult week for Reading fans. Roger Smee, who's a former Reading player, a former Reading chairman, his bid was kind of leaked, which he seemed very upset about, but it was also rejected by Da Young, even though his belief seems to be that it met the criteria of previously successful bids. Why Da Young doesn't want to sell to a guy with an affinity to the club is unknown. The consistent words from the club is that the club is up for sale and he's actively looking for a new owner. If that's the case, why would he reject this bid? I don't know. It feels consistently like decisions are not being made for the benefit of Reading Football Club fans, and that isn't good enough. And then you've also got Rob Couhig, who was the former prospective bidder, who has now filed a compensation claim of around reportedly £10 million over the retracted takeover of the club. So, there are just fires everywhere, and it felt like Ruben Sellers was doing an incredible job at firefighting for the most part, and he's now moved on. So, thoughts and prayers with Reading fans. I've seen quite a few Reading fans. You look at their position in the league table, and you're like, well, wow, they could be a team that could challenge possibly for the playoffs this season. They're currently sitting in sixth, but Reading fans are still saying, hold on, if we go into administration, which looks relatively likely, then we get a 20-point deduction and we need to stay up, which, as a Cambridge fan, you might find somewhat...
you just don't want teams to go down for that reason. Correct. And it's just so depressing, and it just, it could be your club, and we always think that, and we don't care about it as much as we should when your club is being reasonably well run, and Cambridge has been at times been brilliantly run and at times absolutely terribly run, and it's amazing how quickly it can go wrong. So yeah, totally echo those. My sympathies with Reading fans, absolutely.
On to League Two now, and it was first v second, although Walsall were kind of first on PPG before the game started, given they got a game in hand. But Walsall travelling to Port Vale, a game of a few chances, but Walsall do go top, having beaten Port Vale 1-0 thanks to a pretty scrappy goal by Jamil Matt. Taylor Allen's delivery from set pieces continues to be superb, scored direct from a corner last weekend. Nearly did it again here, but also putting in the ball that created the goal for this one. And Liam Gordon, who has been threat from an attacking standpoint, he pulled off a really big clearance off the line to deny Jayden Stockley when half the Vale players and fans thought it had gone in. You enjoyed the goal though, Max?
Well, I did. Remember because, it's the volley, isn't it, where the keeper basically saves it, completely saves it, but it still goes up in the air and then just bounces into the goal when everyone's just standing around going, It's sort of a goal that you would see on a park and be like, yeah, that's our level. I'm not saying, bad goals can happen at any level, but it felt very Division 4 to me, this goal.
Division 4?
Yeah.
Wow. The score.
It's my era.
Matt Sadler's top of League Two, continuing to do just an incredible job. have this blueprint for games where they just really restrict the opposition to very few chances, but still carry a really consistent attacking threat. And not many teams, I don't think, will go to Vale and win between now and the end of the season. And they are very much now title favourites, which was not anticipated before a ball was kicked. Onto a team who have really struggled all season really, in Swindon Town, who finally had their day in the sun, under the lights in the sun. Ian Holloway coming up against his former corner set-piece specialist in Charlie Adam. This is one for the purists from that Blackpool team. And Holloway reportedly, according to some Fleetwood social media accounts I've seen, clashing with fans before the game, which I think is fairly rare when it came to his team selection. But he had the last laugh with Swindon winning this game 3-1. A perfect hat-trick for Harry Smith, who continues his incredible goal-scoring form. What I love about this is he's a right-footed target man, right? So he is someone who scores most of his goals with his head. The first was with his right foot was tackling the keeper. It kind of felt like a goal from like FIFA or Pro Evo.
I know what you mean. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? It's a perfect hat-trick, but like only one of the goals was like good. But like, the headed goal is like, you can't ask for much more from a headed goal than him just heading it in, can you? No, it's a good point. Well, I mean, Rude Hullet, Euro 88. I mean, there are different levels of header. Keith Houchin. It wasn't, there are different... I mean,
of all of them, I would say that Harry Smith's goal with his weaker foot was as good a weaker foot goal than perhaps you're ever going to see.
I'm with you
where
there.
He just, on the edge of the box, he just gets that big left leg and absolutely fires it into the the top right-hand corner. For those listening who like Ian Holloway quotes, there are a few that are coming out now. First, we should talk about Jackson Brown, who is an academy graduate who made his first start here. He's 18 years old and performed really well. And Ian Holloway spoke about Jackson Brown in the run-up to this game, and specifically his performance in his fabled run check that he does with to check the fitness of squads before. And he said, he smashed my run that I do. He probably got the 4th best ever time, and he looked like he had more in him. I think that the overall record could be his. His enthusiasm...
Do we know how far the run is? Do we know what the run is?
I reckon it's just a bleep test.
Okay.
But I don't know. His enthusiasm is completely insane. He would run through that wall instead of opening the door if I asked him to, and there would be a big Jackson-shaped hole in it. Life is about how much you want it and how much you can show it. The only difficulty I've got is, which everyone else has told me, is where do you play him? I don't really care. If I was one of the lads in my group and I saw him coming back, I'd be thinking, whoa, hang on a minute. He is going to try and take my place because he can play anywhere.
Yeah.
Difficulty for the FM guys to position him for the next release.
He could be a John Dreyer, attack, midfield, defence, right, left, centre. And I can't hear a bad word about Ian Holloway. I know he's not been, his last few jobs have not gone brilliantly, but once, I've done radio shows with him, and he's a thoroughly entertaining man. And I was once, I can't remember why, me and Barry were on the radio talking about metal detecting, and he rang up because he was actually metal detecting at the time. And no one says artifact like Ian Holloway, let me tell you.
Yeah, I agree. I've worked with him as well, and I'm happy. I've got some pretty significant concerns about his appointment and whether it'll work and his suitability to a job in League Two. But I'm delighted for him, as much as an Oxford fan can be delighted for a Swindon manager to have got a good result, because it's been pretty difficult since he came in. He also called Ollie Clark our Rodri, which I thought was a nice a way to describe one of their players. So a significant win. A tough week for Fleetwood, who were beaten midweek by Doncaster and then lost here 3-1. Gillingham's Salford, Max, big win this for our mate Mark Bonner, who has been under a bit of pressure since a good start to the season, then a massive drop-off. Bit of a shocker for Salford's 18-year-old Sunderland loan keeper Matthew Young, who didn't cover himself with glory, I wouldn't say, for the goal, both kind of flapping it across, and then maybe should have done better with the actual shot from Jaden Clark, and then nearly a ridiculous own goal from Tom Edwards as he kind of played a pass back and just completely misjudged the pace of the ball, and luckily Young was able to get back on the line and sort it out. Thoughts on because I really root for Mark Bonner. He's someone who I know him as a guy, and I really like him. I like the way he talks about the game. I know that his heart is very much in the right place, and he's someone who brought a pretty special few years to Cambridge.
Yeah, felt wrong seeing him in a different tracksuit. I've got to say, having watched none of Gillingham so far this season. I didn't like seeing him. Not, I know life moves on, and we sacked him, and I don't know if it had run its course or not. But yeah, what he did for us was amazing, and the story is amazing because he was a Cambridge fan, and the way he worked his way up. And I think you're right. I think he's got a sensitivity about him, and like a really great understanding of how important a football club is to a community, and like. It wasn't perfect, but it was great, but it was so good. And like he had some lucky, he had Wes Houlihan playing, right? I mean, that you talk about Jay Stansford,
training.
That was a cheat. Like that was a cheat code. Wes Houlihan, it was just unbelievable. I've never seen a central midfielder want the ball from his centre backs ever. Like in however many years of watching football, I just never seen a Cambridge player want to take the ball. But he was brilliant, and he got the best out of him and out of Paul Mullin and Joe Ironside and like many other players. And so, yeah, I would wish him every success. And my only other note from this game is that's where Carl Robinson is, because I didn't know that either.
Yes, Carl went to Salford back end of last season, and it's doing a pretty good job after a difficult start. On then to Morecambe 0, Grimsby 3. Grimsby, what a week for them. I mean, it's kind of remarkable. They've won their 2 games this week, 5-2 and 3-0, yet still have a -1 goal difference, but currently sit in 5th. I mean, I am falling in love with Kieran Green. I was lucky enough to be at their game a few weeks ago at AFC Wimbledon, where he in one of the best assists I've seen live, I think, for their first goal. And again, both assists here. I mean, the second one, there is a touch in there that you have to watch the goal a few times to see this kind of amazing drag back that he does before he plays the ball through. But the assist for the first is absolutely superb. And there's a great tweet from someone called Matt Barker, for those who are still on Twitter, saying, also, I've never been more wrong about a player than Kieran Green. Would happily have seen him leave in the summer. He's basically Zidane. And Max, this made me want to ask you, what players can you think of who've looked initially really bad and then have actually turned out to be quite Zidane-y?
So I did think about this, and it's definitely the complete opposite of just players who, for like a game or two, you think this is the guy, and actually they turn out to be
Federico
terrible.
Makeda.
Yeah, or just like, I don't know, like, did you have this when you were young? When I was young, I was like, well, I think Matt Joseph will play Premier League, and I think Danny Granville will play for England, and I think, and I look at all these players. Andy Duncan, like, I know Man United let him go, but there's no way he's not going to play for England in about 5 years' time. Jody Craddock, I mean, he actually did pretty well for a career, but the number of times I looked at a player and thought, this Kofi Nyama, he is going to solve England's left-sided problems, and it perhaps showed that when I was between 10 and 16, I didn't necessarily have my finger quite on the pulse of the different levels of football. But like instantly springing to mind, I mean, we had a guy called Armand One, who I think Son is now playing somewhere. Playing somewhere. And he was awful. But he was like 6'9", and he did nothing. And then one day away at Bristol City in the LDV Vans Trophy semi-final second leg, he just scored 2 absolutely brilliant goals. He had like amazing feet, like it's such a cliche, but he did, and he was very mercurial. But yeah, that reminds me of just a player that just one day just turned into this amazing thing. So we went to the LDV Vans final and we got humped by Blackpool at the Millennium Stadium. But look, it was, got to take a final at this level.
Yeah, I mean, I think whoever was doing the CM 0102 judging was at that game then, because Armand One was absolutely ridiculous in that game. We'll go rattle through the last few matches. I know you've got to go. Harrogate 0, AFC Wimbledon 3. Dons continuing their very good form on the roads with a very dominant display. Harrogate were relatively poor with this one. Dons will have much tougher games away from home, but after some difficult results at home, important for them to get this result, and they're still sitting relatively pretty in the League 2 table. Chesterfield beat Tranmere 3-0, kind of fairly similar, with Chesterfield just absolutely dominating Tranmere in this one. Really good goal from Ryan Coldclough for the opener. Max, you enjoyed that one?
Yes, lovely turn, wasn't it? I was very impressed with that.
And a really sweet strike in one corner.
Lovely.
Coldcroft's interesting because he was a big player for them in the National League, but that was his first goal in the league this season. Massive concerns that have to be for Tranmere, who are just 4 points clear of the relegation zone and are massively relying on teams like Carlisle and Morecambe being poor, and there are signs of life from them. And if I was a Tranmere fan, I'd be pretty concerned right now, especially with Swindon having to put in a much better performance on Saturday. But Chesterfield, after a difficult run of form, bouncing back with a really dominant display. Dylan Markindale looking really lively again on the right-hand side. One more game that finished with a win was probably the windiest game of the day, I would say.
This looked
1,
bleak. This
Bromley
looked really
2.
bleak, didn't it? And it was just people hoying it from wherever they could, and just the ball just bouncing over people.
I mean, there were two. If you look at the shot map of this game on,
I confess I haven't looked at the shot map of Accrington Bromley. Do forgive me.
The location, the FotMob do great shot stats. Firstly, Accrington had 6 shots in the game, all were from outside the area. The goal that they scored from Woods was, I haven't really seen a goal scored like that, where he just kind of pings it from the left-hand channel and it just flies into the bottom right-hand corner with the keeper not moving. And then the goal that won it very late on it was with half an hour to go. In fact, from Odeteo was just a cross that bounced in the middle of the box and then bounced over the keeper and went in.
Did you hear that? As they were running to celebrate, it just sounded like everyone just yelling, "I'm really surprised!" Like it was like not a football chant, and I don't know what it was. It just sounded like, if you watch it again, everyone's just going, "I'm really surprised," and people just saying the word "surprised" a lot. And I don't know if he is prolific or not, but it just sounded odd from a football crowd or from the players. Yeah, just people going, "I'm surprised."
Maybe Bromley fans are just incredibly polite.
Yeah, possible.
Just turning to all the Accrington hosts and saying, "Guys, I'm surprised." Yeah. Forgive us.
I have no more logical explanation than that.
2 more games finished in draws. Doncaster 2, Cheltenham 2. Maybe the best goal of the day from George Broadbent, who kicked the ball incredibly hard to get the equaliser for Donny. Donny's home form is surprisingly poor for a team in their position. Cheltenham continuing to be massively improved under Michael Flynn. And then finally, Crewe 1, Bradford 1. Which one of the early kickoffs. And the last thing I'm going to ask you about is the red card for Alex Patterson, because he scored the equaliser for Bradford to make it 1-1. He went absolutely crazy, a celebration that suggested he was quite amped up for this one, and then gets a red card for wellying the ball at Omar Bogle, who's just been fouled. What did you make of this?
I think you would class it under naughty, and I think he thought he'd get away with it. I think
it was interesting that there was a scrap afterwards, and he went and stood over by the dugouts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so when the referee gave the red card, he had to walk away from the scrap for 20 yards.
But he did that total confusion when he got the red card, going, "This is an absolute outrage." But you could just tell from the way everyone reacted. It's not on, is it? It's just a bit silly. Don't do that. I mean, Omar Bogle, in my mind, has been playing EFL football since I was about 5. So he must be. I mean, he might be 27, but in my mind, he's about 60. But yeah, don't do that to Omar Bogle. Would be how I feel about that incident.
Or to anyone.
Correct decision, but specifically Omar. He's an old man. Look after him. How old is Omar Bogle?
I would say 32, my guess.
32.
Let's have a look. 31.
31.
Can't bear it.
Okay, he's younger than I imagined.
Yeah, I mean, he played a lot in non-league as well. He's very good for Solihull Moors. Anyway, Max, we've got to let you get to your Laxa.
I've got 5 minutes to have dinner, and then I have to host a podcast myself. So
sorry about that.
I hope you didn't feel like you had to rush through League 2 because we spent too much time
a little bit, but it's okay.
Talking about our own lives.
We learn about your life, which is nice. Max Rushden, this has been your life.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for joining me today.
I thought when I did This Is Your Life, there'd be more fanfare, frankly. I mean, it's with all due respect to you, George. I was thinking someone else. It would be like a Stephen Mulhern job. That's what I was expecting. But,
Mulhern's actually on the pod next week. So,
fair enough. Thank you so much. And thanks to you and Ali for coming on Football Weekly and telling us about stuff we don't know. And
pleasure.
I enjoyed watching some good EFL highlights because it's been too long.
Great. Well, thank you, Max. We'll speak to you again soon. And thank you guys for listening. We'll be back again with the betting show on Thursday. But in the meantime, enjoy the midweek action. There'll be an Under the Lights as well coming this week on NTT20.com with me and Matt. So make sure you're subscribed to NTT20.com to get hold of that. Max will obviously be watching the Cambridge game live because it's midweek. Yes. So fingers crossed for a good result there. And we will speak again soon. Go well.